everyone, and welcome to the 411 Ground and Pound Radio Show, your weekly look into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. And occasional comments on other combat sports-related stuff. I bring that up specifically because I have a couple of very quick thoughts on the boxing match from last night between Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, but we'll get to that when we get to it. I'm Robert Winfrey, I'm your host. Tonight we are discussing, what a week, the finale of The Ultimate Fighter Season 28, which we all, I think, hoped was the last one. Dana White says it's not going anywhere. They've received money for another season, but there's not a home or a channel specified yet. I don't know who is paying for The Ultimate Fighter in 2018 as a network, but I want to know who they are, because I want to dump gas station quality sushi on them. I mean, you don't understand what you're doing, do you? You've never watched a single episode. In fact, eat gas station sushi while having to watch the last season, and then tell me you want to pay for that on your network. Ugh. We will also be reviewing UFC Fight Night 142. The UFC was back in Adelaide, Australia last night, and boy, was that that was a bad night for the Aussies, man. That was a bad night for the Aussies. Relatively bad night for the UFC's. They keep trying on occasion with the UFC to usher out some of the old fighters. They match up the young up-and-coming guys with some of the old guard who are kind of on their way down, hoping for divisional turnover, which is a good and necessary thing. And it just keeps not happening, especially at heavyweight and light heavyweight. But
I'm sorry, Tyson Pedro, you're the new James Tahuna.
Oh, God, I'm struggling to refute that. I think he's a little better than Tahuna, but...
Accept it, Robert. It's true.
I think he's a little better than Tahuna, but yeah, generally. Well, that and he's a little better than Tahuna, and light heavyweight, is significantly worse than middleweight.
You know what else? Shogun has won his last 4 out of 5 fights.
Yep. I mean, when he got on the mic and Dan Hardy asked him, so what do you think what does Shogun think he has to do for a title shot? He just said, win one more fight. I went, he's probably not wrong. I mean, that's a sad, sad thing, but it's probably true.
I mean, if he wants to get destroyed by John Jones again, or Gustafsson for that matter.
Who both beat him pretty comprehensively. Or Anthony Smith, who I think would just kill him again. Or Volkan Oezdemir, who I think would kill him. Anyway, we'll get to all of that.
But he's hanging in there.
The division sucks.
He's hanging in there better than Tito and Chuck. That's for damn sure.
Let's not talk about
it. I will talk about it because I'm very angry about it.
Didn't we talk about a little bit about that last week? Just like
I'm even angrier about it today than I was.
Let it go.
I can't.
It happened. It sucked. It was a black
eye on the
sport.
Robert. I can't let go of these things.
Well, Chuck can't let go of fighting.
Well, in that way, we're similar. So,
all right.
Kamaru Usman versus Rafael dos Anjos headlined The Ultimate Fighter.
Hang on. There's one more thing. We are also going to be previewing UFC 231.
Yes.
Thankfully, an event on the horizon with a legitimate pay-per-view quality main event and co-main event.
That probably won't do very well on pay-per-view, but...
Probably not, but I'm going to take my wins where I can get them, and if the fight happens, I'm calling it a win. All right, so with that out of the way, again, on Friday night, in the small octagon from the Pearl at the Palms Casino in Las Vegas, in front of about 2,000 people.
I was glad to see them back at the Pearl.
Yeah.
I like that venue. It seemed
I've never been.
I think they were at what's the phrase? I think they were not at the Palms for a while because there was some sort of dispute, but it was good to see them back there. They've been running cards there for quite a while, so
yeah. A lot of these really small ones, and especially the tough finales, they do in these smaller venues because they're not selling out an actual stadium or arena for that. So.
But watching an event there live is actually a very interesting experience. It's a very because like you're really up like every seat's a good seat. You're really up close and into everything. It's a very I don't want to say intimate, but it's a very unique way to watch fights live, to watch like high level fights. So
yeah, you really don't see a lot of elite level MMA that close up most of the time. So
yeah, and you can it's like
I've
you
never
can
been
see
to the
everything,
venue, so.
you can hear everything. Really, it's impressive.
No, I've never been to the venue, so I can't speak to the live experience.
And the last fight I actually saw there was an Ultimate Fighter finale. Granted, it was in 2012, so over 6.5 years ago, but it was still quite the experience.
Yeah. All right. In your main event, Kamaru Usman defeats Rafael dos Anjos via unanimous decision, 50-43, 49-45, 48-47. Really? Somebody gave RDA 2 rounds? I was 49-46, I seem to recall.
He did have a couple.
Hang on, let me preface that. Let me preface my statement.
Okay.
I'm surprised at that because RDA had the most... when I say that, I don't mean that he didn't have good moments and that he didn't have good rounds. Again, I gave him the second. I thought he had a really solid third round, I think, was there another round that he had some really good moments in. He did... There were... Again, he didn't get blown out of the water necessarily.
I agree. It's a problem to me to have a 50-43 and then a 48-47, though. That's a problem.
That is, and quite frankly, because Nevada has not adopted the new rules, under the old scoring system, I don't think the fourth was a 10-8 for Usman. The fifth absolutely should have been. The fifth was a 10-8 for Usman. Under the new rules, under the new scoring criteria, the fourth round could go 10-8 for Usman. But I again, like that, I can't go 50-43 under the old scoring criteria because I don't think under that criteria the fourth was a 10-8.
I definitely think we need more 10-8s and 10-10s. I've been banging that drum for a while.
Yeah. And again, in this instance, it's just me applying the scoring criteria.
I think the issue is that, to me, there are marginal 10-8s that don't get scored 10-8s.
Yeah.
A lot.
Well, and again, the fifth round under the old system is more marginal than not, but...
Based on my research of the rules, 10-8s does not necessarily mean you almost get a finish. It has to be like... I feel like if you're overwhelmingly dominant from the first minute to the last second, that's like a 10-8, right?
Under the new rules, the scoring language was designed to reflect that. Under the old rules, it does say, I think it does specify that the 10-8s are to be awarded if the argument is specifically there that the fight could have been stopped.
Yeah.
Again, it's just archaic language that needed
to be interpretive. It's too interpretive to me.
Oh yeah, it is. It's absolutely a major problem.
Subjective. And it's way too subjective.
Yeah, it is. And it's the major problem. It's one of the major problems with scoring and MMA specifically because it's so... I mean, for God's sake, they can't even score boxing correctly, and boxing has a very straightforward scoring criteria.
Usman didn't get the finish here, but he had a pretty exciting showing, all things, and he...
I don't know what you do with... I mean, Usman's great. Like, he's... When I say one-dimensional, let me be very clear about this. I don't mean that he can't do other things, because he can. But his biggest asset, and what he leans on most heavily, is his wrestling. Doesn't mean he can't punch. Man has some power. Doesn't mean he doesn't have some technical proficiency striking. He's been working on it. Doesn't mean he can't play some jiu-jitsu. He stopped a couple of really nice sweep attempts from Dos
Anjos is a really tough opponent too, Robert.
Yeah.
I mean, when is the last time he was finished? Was against Eddie Alvarez.
Was Alvarez with that? And that was a standing TKO.
And that was almost 2.5 years ago. Let's see. His only finishes in the UFC.
He got knocked out by Stevens. He had the jaw injury against
Guida.
I think that's it.
And Alvarez. So he's only been finished. He's only been finished 3 times in the UFC. Tony Ferguson couldn't finish him, though he did beat him up.
Khabib couldn't finish him.
Khabib, right?
I mean, again, Dos Anjos is tough, and really...
Yeah, those are the only 3 times he's been finished in his whole MMA career.
And really, I mean, if you want to think about how good Dos Anjos is, look at the trouble that Usman was having with him through the first 3.5 rounds. I mean, he was winning. Again, I think he won all but the second round I gave to Usman. But Dos Anjos was able to relatively consistently get up from under him. And if you look at every other Usman fight, nobody gets up from him, gets out from under him that easy. His control is a real thing of beauty. And the fact that Dos Anjos was able to
when he's not in the center and able to dictate the pace, he does not respond as well. He's not as good at the whole counter-strike thing, you know? And that's where Usman appeared to have the advantage. Dos Anjos was able to rally back at times, and he was able to, you know, swing and land some hard shots, but it just wasn't enough. The volume, by and large, went to Usman. And
a lot of hang on. Yeah. A lot of that volume comes from his work on the ground. If you limit it to just standing strikes, they're closer to even, which is a problem for Dos Anjos when at welterweight specifically. He can't. When you're the smaller guy, you can't go
Usman
1-for-1.
had no trouble taking him down.
Well, Usman has no trouble taking anyone down.
Well,
I mean anyone. I mean look at the way that guy's fought. There's no one who's had anything approximating even the level of success that Dos Anjos had here.
Yes, he is, and he is pretty big for his weight class.
Usman's a legit 170.
He's a big, thick 170.
Yeah,
and he's 6 foot. He's 76-inch reach, so he's a good size. He's at a good size for this weight class.
Yeah. Dos Anjos is.
I don't know. He's done well.
Look, the fact that he's done well despite being undersized is again a testament to his skill level, but he is undersized for the division.
Okay.
That's simply a statistical analysis of his body relative to the average welterweight. He's just smaller. And again, that doesn't mean he can or won't win. He has. He had a lot of success. He's had a fair amount of success at welterweight, actually.
If you're listening to Dana White, Usman could just go straight to the title shot next.
He could. I mean, this guy he's never lost in the UFC. Not only has he never lost, he's never come
This is 8 in a row
to losing.
I mean, this is 8 in a row. He's
nobody's hit him with a clean punch, really. Nobody's rocked him. Nobody's got a near submission. This was one of the only rounds, I think, that second round.
His only loss was
way back in his early.
Yeah, really early into his MMA career.
In his first, three fights, I think.
Yeah, it was his second fight. He lost by submission. He's gone undefeated since that time. That's his only loss. He's been undefeated.
Multiple
and this is 8-0
under his belt.
This is 8 wins, right now. So, I mean, that's really more than enough to warrant a title shot. And look, Colby Covington was interim champion. That belt's already gone now. So, I mean, does it really matter? I mean, it's one thing. All right, they did that fight. Now Usman's beaten Dos Anjos, and he beat Maia. So,
I mean, ideally you'd get Usman and Covington for a clear-cut number 1 contender spot. But we're likely to get...
But do Woodley and Usman, are they even able to put together a good fight, or is it just a lot of tentative...
I mean, look, again, sometimes you just get ugly fights, but you have the top guy fight the top contender.
Yeah, but it happens with Woodley like every other fight.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah, it has. And some of that's on him, some of that's on his opposition, but...
Uh-huh.
I mean, we just had the rocket ship on the exciting guy who, everyone really loves to watch get blown up because Tyron is, the best welterweight in the world.
Darren Till. What, Darren Till?
Yeah.
Darren Till had no business being in that fight.
I completely agree. He leapfrogged more deserving contenders because he was perceived as more exciting. That fight against Woodley should have been Colby
But he
Covington's.
was clear. It didn't look like he was even ready to be in there at all.
No, he did very little in the first round and then because he apparently studied no tape on Woodley or something, walked into the same pullback right that Woodley used. That's like Woodley's exclusive punch.
I think at least Usman to me is like, in terms of skill, seems to be a slightly tougher matchup than Till. I mean, for Usman. Till had never fought a wrestler before. I think everyone was talking about his size, but I mean,
in fairness,
size,
he is a huge welterweight.
He's huge, but size doesn't necessarily win fights, and he's British, so he can't wrestle. So, and I mean, that's always a big red flag for me. So, I'm not saying he will get booked into the title fight next, but he could.
Yeah, I mean,
we'll see.
You can go with either Covington or Usman as your next title challenger, and I'm fine with either. I'm genuinely fine with either of them getting that shot.
Let's see. I want to just look at the rankings really quick. See, how is Darren Till being number 2 is just iffy to me. You know?
No, he should be, after that loss to Woodley, he should have dropped to 5 or 6 from where I stand.
Like, I'm just saying, when I check these rankings again later in the week, to me, Usman should be number 2. He should be number 2, realistically. Yeah, he should definitely be number 2.
Well, wait until, I mean, the rankings will update on Monday, so.
Right. I mean, he's at number 5 now. Arguably, to me, he should already be ahead of Thompson. He should already be at least number 4. Don't you agree?
Yeah, going into this, he should have been a little bit higher than he was.
Ponzinibbio, I feel like he should maybe be higher than 7, don't you think?
Jeez, they only bumped him up to 7 after he ran through Magny?
I mean, I feel like... Because Ponzinibbio, maybe he doesn't have the big names, but he's been doing very well.
No, I mean, Ponzinibbio's on a significant winning streak as well.
And Lawler just doesn't fight enough, so...
Well, Lawler's going to fight. I think there's been some rumor of him and Askren.
Lawler seems to be winding down anyway, unless he's going to leave UFC.
Robbie Lawler shouldn't be in the top 5. Where is he right now? Is he still... I think he is
He's 6, so he's not quite...
That's still too high. I mean, if I were to do a welterweight rankings off the top of my head, so forgive me, so you have champion Woodley.
Right.
Call Covington number 1, Usman 2, and those two can flip-flop, but...
Should Covington even legitimately be number 1 right now?
Who?
Covington.
Yeah, so you have Woodley, Covington, Usman... Maybe Thompson hanging out at...
Should Covington even be ranked?
Covington? Yeah.
I don't know.
Why shouldn't he?
Because he hasn't fought since Dos Anjos. And he's not...
Yeah, sure, but Dos Anjos only just fought.
Right.
I mean, look, if we get to, if we go another 8 months without him fighting, yeah, but...
I feel like Usman's done more.
You could argue that.
Because he has 8 wins. He beat Dos Anjos. I mean, Covington also beat Dos Anjos, but it's 8 wins, man.
Yeah.
Covington has no title. Okay, so I mean, who the hell cares? That was a fake title.
Again, if you want to swap those two around, you can. I'm not going to get too hung up on specific position. But I don't think Lawler would be near the bottom of my top 10. Thompson would probably be number 5-ish. Till 6 or 7. Ponzinibbio. I might have Ponzinibbio at 5.
All right, fair enough.
No, welterweight's got a lot of good guys who are coming up right now, and you throw Ben Askren into the mix. Geez, actually, because I forget he's a welterweight. I mean, I'll have to see how he does against Lawler.
We'll see what they do with him.
I mean,
and look, we'll see what Ben Askren can even do in the UFC. I mean,
it's a fair point. He's been quasi-retired for a little bit.
but not only that, he's older now, and they didn't get him when they probably should have for
They didn't
whatever.
want him when they should have wanted him, really.
I mean, there are so many things that make no sense about it to me, but they're doing it now, so go figure. One thing that's probably working for Askren is he at 34 he hasn't taken the damage someone like Chuck Liddell, Rashad Evans, Forrest Griffin did at that point. You know?
I mean, Shogun's only around that. Shogun's literally around that same age,
Yeah.
and he's taken 1/10,
He-
1/100th the
I mean,
damage that Shogun has.
he almost got his ass beat last night, so there you go.
Should have. All right. So anyway, that was your main event.
All right.
It played about like we all expected it to, I think. I mean, I said in my preview this is going to look a lot like Dos Anjos Covington, but with more control from Usman, and Usman hits harder, and that's essentially what we got. I mean, there's an argument that Dos Anjos won the Covington fight. There's an argument for scoring that for him based on efficacy. No such argument exists here.
Right.
Again, I gave Dos Anjos 1 round, and there's an argument that he didn't even win that. Usman is... That man is a problem. He's called himself that in the past.
Yeah.
He's going to be in the title picture very, very soon, and beating that man is
He's
going to be...
not there already.
Yeah, and beating him is going to be a significant task to anyone who's able to pull it off. God. You know what? I'm just going to read the rest of these, and we'll just see if there's anything you want to talk about, because the rest of this card, man.
Yep.
Right, Juan Espino defeated Justin Frazier via straight armbar in the first round. Crappy heavyweights. Espino... I mean, Frazier probably shouldn't even be in the UFC. He didn't look like it. I'm going to withhold some judgment on Espino because... I mean, dude's 38, but he's got a pretty solid wrestling background. He moves relatively well for a heavyweight, so I want to see him against actual UFC-level opposition rather than just a tough finale. Macy Chiasson defeated Penny Kianzad via rear naked choke in the second round. This was your generic mid-level women's featherweight fight. I mean, I don't know. That division is just such an... I don't think that division will exist if Amanda Nunes beats Cyborg, because I don't think they'll try to have her hold 2 belts. And if Cyborg's not the champion and the UFC doesn't... I mean, the UFC might just let her go, which is fine if they don't want to play around with that division, but I don't know. I mean, I don't expect Cyborg to lose that fight, but that's another division that is a division in name only. Pedro Munoz defeated Brian Caraway via TKO in the first round with a body kick and punches. I've harped on Pedro Munoz because he has some glaring holes in his game, but he's also been successful, and it was nice to see a guy who recognized, hey, my opponent's hurt to the body. He caught Caraway with a knee to the body off of a clinch break that kind of got him to double over a little bit. He landed a few more front kicks to the body that just caused Caraway to crumple and then finished him on the mat. Good stuff for Munoz, who's I don't think ever going to really be at the top of the division, but is a pretty solid hand and good to have around.
You know who's never going to be at the top? Brian Caraway.
Yeah, I shouldn't enjoy his failure as much as I do. It's not healthy. Edmund Shabazian defeated Darren Stewart via split decision. Just kind of there. I mean, Stewart struggled with the wrestling, but he struggled to disengage. He did a lot of wall walking, but couldn't really break free. And so Shabazian got him down, let him back up, got him down, just a lot of mat returns. Antonina Shevchenko defeated Ji Yeon Kim via unanimous decision. Kim missed weight badly for this fight. This is at flyweight, so 125, 126 if you're in a non-title fight, and she weighed 130 and a half. She took the fight on short notice. That should be noted. But still, man, I mean, that's a horrible amount to miss weight by. I mean, just absolutely horrible. I mean, and when I say late notice, she announced that on November 8th. She shouldn't have missed by that much. I mean, again, we're talking 5 pounds, give or take. That's a catastrophic amount to miss by. Shevchenko, looked pretty good. She has, decent, a decent kickboxing game, pretty good tie clinch game, and solid debut with more something to build on than something that really wows people, which is not the worst thing in the world. Kevin Aguilar defeated Rick Glenn. Glenn also missed weight. He weighed 148.5, which is a big miss as well. Again, I don't like anybody missing weight by any amount. I'm at least understanding of the really small misses, say half a pound or less. Again, I still don't like it. I still think you should make the weight. You sign for the weight, make the weight. But if you miss by, this much, I have very, very little sympathy for events. I mean, this wasn't even a late notice thing. This was always the fight. This was always the date, and he missed by, again, for a non-title affair, 2.5 pounds. Something, if there was some major health concern, I understand, don't kill yourself making weight because that has happened. But if you're getting to that point, you either need a drastic change in your fight prep or you need to change weight classes. And again, it's not good. Decent enough win for Aguilar, who's on a pretty good winning streak overall. And is a relatively fun guy to watch, so good for him. He had some success in the fight. Joseph Benavidez finally didn't look rusty and like a shell of himself, and pretty much steamrolled Alex Perez in the first round. Benavidez made a plea for the flyweight division to stick around after the fact. I appreciate him saying it, but it's too late, man.
It is murky.
Happening. Sorry, what was that?
It is murky.
Yeah, that's like standing over the body of someone and saying, please don't kill them. It's gone. It's going to be gone. It sucks.
I just thought it was funny how, the reporters were asking Dana White things have been murky with flyweight division, and he's just like, it is murky.
No, it's going away. You released half the division already. I mean, if you're going to release half a division in the UFC and try to rebuild it, it wouldn't be flyweight. All right?
But it's murky, Robert.
It's not
it's murky. It's murky.
Now, Dana White, we're not sure about flyweights. It's murky. Future of the Ultimate Fighter. Hell yeah. Get bent.
Oh, chill out.
Maurice Green defeated Michelle Batista via triangle choke in the first round. Look, this was one of these other guys fought on this season of Tough. Maurice Green's a former Glory champion? Competitor, if nothing else. I can't remember. I want to say he was a champion. He's young in his MMA career, but Batista's, he represented Cuba at the Olympics, right? In Beijing, I want to say. So that was, 16? Genuinely can't remember what year that was. Excuse me. I mean, Batista beat Daniel Cormier at some amateur wrestling at some point. So again, dude can wrestle. I'd like to see how he'll develop as an actual fighter. So a couple of heavyweights that we might be seeing for a while. I'm not thrilled because they're both still young in the sport, but hopefully they get better. Leah Letson defeated Julia Stolyarenko via split decision. This was crappy women's featherweight action. Roosevelt Roberts defeated Daryl Horcher with a standing guillotine choke in the first round. Really nice adjustment on his guillotine grip to get the finish for this, because it starts out, he just kind of grabs it when Horcher's looking for a takedown. He spins Horcher. He shifts his grip so that he's... I can't really describe it. You need the visuals from this. Instead of having like a Gable grip or even an S grip with his hands, he interlocks his fingers and just kind of wedges like one arm up. I think it's a modification of the technique like Cody McKenzie uses. John Jones used it to put Lyoto Machida to sleep from essentially the same position. It's an adjustment that you have to make to that position, and it's nice to see that he was able to make it. A lot of guys burn their arms out going for that because they're doing it wrong. Tim Means defeated Ricky Rainey via TKO in the first round. This was an ass whooping. And Ione Barcelos defeated Chris Gutierrez via rear naked choke in the second round. I don't really remember much about this fight. But, it was a finish. Good. Yeah, Barcelos is 2-0 in the UFC now. He knocked out Holloway, I think, in his debut. All right. Anyway, Jeff, again, there weren't a lot of good fights throughout that, but there were a few sleepers. What do you want to talk about? What
Tim Means won. I like Tim Means. Benavidez won, at least. Had an impressive showing. And so did Pedro Munoz. That's about it. I don't think anything else is really worth diving into. Okay, here's one thing. Antonina Shevchenko did not have a good fight. That fight was awful.
All right. And again,
Do you disagree? It sounds sold my reaction there.
I don't completely disagree.
Okay. You thought Shevchenko looked good?
What?
You thought Shevchenko, the sister, looked good?
She looked about as good as she... Look, this is something... Again, it's important to get in to get the first UFC win. She fought someone who spent essentially the entire time either ducking into overhead rights or just pushing for a clinch. I thought she fought well. I think she's not as polished as, for lack of a better comparison, her sister. But if this is where she is now and she continues to grow, I think it's a good place to grow from. If this is as good as she's ever going to be, I don't think she'll be here all that long.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah, that was Friday. That was 6.5 hours of stuff.
How early was this card in Australia? I'm just thinking about how early was it. Like, here it was regular in the evening, but when did it start in Australia, though?
They mentioned it on the broadcast, I think, and I can't remember. This would have been probably... They're like just straight up 12 hours different from us, right?
Okay, so that means...
it would have been... this would have gone, I think, like 8 or 9 in the morning, give or take.
So that's a real early morning start for that. Hey, props to the fans who showed up in Adelaide then.
Yeah, I mean, Dan Hardy at one point had...
Just see all their countrymen lose.
Yeah. Dan Hardy had a great line about that. I forget what fight it was during, but the two guys were trading some pretty wicked knees in the clinch. And his response was, "Oh, God, it's just too early in the day for body shots, man. You're going to be walking around feeling that all day. You don't even get to sleep it off." Yeah, that's very true.
Hey.
All right. In your main event last night, Junior Dos Santos got his first winning streak in 6 years when he defeated Tai Tuivasa via TKO in the second round. Not a whole lot to unpack here. Junior still has the same problem he has with being backed into the fence, basically, before he'll try to move off of it. He
got the job done last night.
He did. He took a couple of hard leg kicks. One of them... I mean, I'll say this about Tuivasa. The man has good... I mean, for all his other flaws, he has a really good kicking game, and he's not afraid to throw leg kicks. He's hobbled some guys with those in his UFC run, even, so...
But Junior it was probably one of Junior's better performances in a while. He did weather the early storm, but this is the first time he's gone 2-0 since he was champion. Yeah, again, it's his first winning streak since 2012. If you can consider 2 in a row a winning streak, it's not even
It is technically a streak.
Yeah. Two fight winning streak, but he hasn't been able to do that in such a long time. Yeah. So good on him, I guess.
Yeah, I mean during
that period where he was fighting Kane, I thought he was really slowing down and kind of winding down. And I mean, I mean, I don't know how much longer he has realistically, but he's managed to hang in there, so good for him.
I don't know how. Look, if you to everyone out there, I don't know how you can't be a fan of Junior after you listen to him talk. I mean, just the way he. I think it was Brett Okamoto who said this. The way he did his post-fight interview saying, I have knockout power in my hands with all the glee of a 8-year-old pretending he has superpowers. Like, I mean, Junior is just one of the most affable fighters in the world. And
he's been that way for a long time, though, man.
Yeah, he's always been a really, really likable guy. Like, he will try to kill you in the cage, but as soon as it's over, he's all smiles all the time. This is a guy who's just happy to be living life, you know?
I mean, I always felt like some Brazilians or other fighters could have learned from him because he actually put in the effort to learn English and just become a more marketable fighter when he was making his run at heavyweight.
Yeah, I mean, his first couple of fights, in the UFC, he doesn't speak English. He doesn't understand it for a little bit after that, but he speaks a little bit of it, so he has a translator in there so he can make sure he understands the question appropriately. But he worked at it very, very hard. I mean, he lives in the States now, I think.
Right.
And, it paid off. He has a much better audience connection with the English-speaking world than a lot of Brazilian fighters who don't. So,
right.
I really like the finishing sequence here. If you watch it, he and Tuivasa both kind of miss those, windmill overhand rights. They get close, but as Junior's back is to the fence, as he goes to kind of angle and turn away from the fence, he throws a bit of a left hook that just kind of gets Tuivasa turning more than really lands. And Tuivasa obliges him by both turning and trying to kind of exit the pocket, but he does so with his hands down. And when I say down, I don't mean at his shoulders. I don't even mean at his chest. I mean like down by his side. And Junior was throwing a right hook that he kind of turned into and clipped him on the chin, dropped him. Junior jumped on him, got to full mount, pounded him out. It was a really nice finishing sequence, and Junior afterwards
maybe went on a bit too long, but I guess Dean was just giving.
I mean, Tuivasa wasn't getting hurt. Like it's one of those things where once it was clear that Tuivasa was not going to actually get out of that position, the stoppage was appropriate.
He was giving him a little leniency. I was fine with it. It wasn't egregious to me. And then punches from Mount.
Oh, God. Look,
what's
guys,
up with that?
Let me be clear. Punching back at your opponent like that is a good way to indicate that you are both conscious and in the fight. So, on the one hand, okay, good idea. If that's the only thing you're doing when your opponent has you mounted, the referee is going to save you from getting pummeled because you're not going to knock someone out from that position, and you're not doing what's necessary to escape. I mean, if Tuivasa is throwing those kind of crappy hammer fists, but he's also got his feet under him, or he's trying to buck and bridge and shrimp, it's a whole other. The whole situation is different because that indicates that you are. Not only are you here and you want to keep fighting, but you are in a position to do so, not just intellectually in the terms of consciousness, and not just physically in terms of consciousness, but intellectually in the sense that you're not going to hurt yourself or get hurt because you don't know what to do. There's a lot of ways to get out of mount. They all suck when someone like Junior's punching you in the face, but if all you're doing is laying flat on your back, throwing back hammer fists, stopping that to prevent you from getting, from taking more damage is the correct call. There's a reason the standard for stopping a fight is intelligent defense.
This was a big test for Tuivasa. And he has areas he needs to improve upon. So this isn't necessarily rock bottom for him, and now he has things he'll hopefully improve on. And look, fighters can improve and fix these areas. Some better than others. Some are never quite able to do that. But I'm happy for Junior though, because I'm not like saying he's back, but like this was definitely he needed a performance like this to stay relevant and stay a name in the heavyweight division. Which, look, Junior, I think you would even agree, Robert, that Junior has been struggling for a while.
Oh, yeah.
Because, he'll have one performance where he looks fairly decent, and then he'll have another one where he looks like hot garbage, and I just don't understand it sometimes. I feel like, honestly, it's weird to me when he finally had that fight with Overeem. He just got smoked, really.
And now wants a rematch with Overeem, which...
I don't know.
What? It's not the worst idea in the world, actually.
You could do that. I think most fights for Junior that are out there right now are probably rematches, though, aren't they? Because that's just what we're dealing with the heavyweight division.
Well, he hasn't fought Derek Lewis, I don't think.
You could do that.
Again, the point being, the majority of that division, yeah, he's already fought them. So you are looking at rematches.
Has he fought Curtis Blades?
No.
I think Curtis Blades just lost, and what else? I
actually don't hate him and Overeem having a rematch. I really don't.
Rubber match with Stipe. They're 1-1.
Not after the way that last one went, man. Is there any doubt? If he fights Overeem and Overeem fights the same way he just fought.
They gave him the third fight with Kane, and it went pretty much the same way.
But I think we also knew after the second fight that a third fight would look like the second.
Justin Willis has a similar record to Tai Tuivasa before this fight, the Junior.
Yeah, you could. Tuivasa called out Willis. I'm okay with that fight. Let the two. Those are two young guys that are kind of on the rise.
Honestly, I don't like the idea of Willis fighting a guy like Dos Santos yet.
No, that would be too much for Willis. Again, Tuivasa called out Willis. I'm fine with Tuivasa versus Willis.
I'm fine with that. Yeah, I agree.
They're both ranked. Tuivasa will still be ranked after the loss. Willis will move up after his win. Let him fight. I'm okay with it.
But Junior's in a good spot right now because he might just all things being the way they are, he might be fighting for the title again. Believe it or not, very soon.
It is not that far outside the realm of possibility.
Just because if Daniel Cormier is on borrowed time, they're going to need and unless they get rid of the heavyweight division, Robert, they're going to need some guys to fight for that belt.
Yep.
If Cormier retires within the next 6 months.
Yeah, and Junior
even if it's in the not 6 months and he fights Brock Lesnar or whatever, it's very likely this title could become vacant. And that's equally as likely if somehow it ends up being John Jones versus Cormier for the heavyweight title. Something making it get vacated.
That's also possible. So yeah, Junior is not too far outside the title picture, all things considered. And again, I don't think a rematch with Overeem is inappropriate. They both have, had wins and losses since that fight. I'd be okay with it.
Coming off fairly decent wins, so why not? Yeah.
All right, in your co-main event, Tyson Pedro had a massive brain fart. Once again, lost a fight he should have won. He was TKO'd by Shogun, right? Mauricio Shogun, who won in the third round.
How good is Tyson Pedro even? You're saying he should have won this, but how good is this kid really?
Let me be clear. When I say he should have won, was in a position where you needed to make a conscious choice not to win the fight.
Okay.
That when I say someone should have won, that's usually what I mean. Not always, but usually.
He was doing very well. He was basically beating up Shogun, and then the fight
he had him against the fence, badly hurt, rocked him with an uppercut, and immediately went in for a takedown.
I thought the fight was going to get finished.
That's when he did the same thing. This is literally the same thing that happened with OSP, right? He hurts him on the feet because OSP's not a good striker. gets him against the fence, and rather than find an appropriate distance to continue striking at, goes for a takedown. Gives his opponent a chance to clear his head, and in the case of OSP, let the bigger, stronger, better grappler then drown him on the ground. Pedro, his right knee, I think, was the one that gave out on him in the second round. Just wound up putting too much weight on it at a weird angle all of a sudden when Shogun was kicking out one of his legs from behind in a rear waist lock. And that's what led to the finish, because he got hit and just couldn't put any real weight on his back leg.
Let me ask you a question.
Finished him.
Robert. Did Shogun prove anything with this win last night?
I mean, other than the fact that he's still an unbelievably tough human being, no.
So you think this is all on Pedro that Shogun was able to win this fight?
I mean, look, Shogun is still unbelievably tough. You have to get, if you want him out of there, you have to get him out.
Being such an experienced and seasoned veteran that you can't, completely sleep on him in a scenario like this.
I mean, again, you can't sleep on him, but
because look, he is 4 out of his last 5.
Yeah, I mean, again, sure, but the division also sucks.
Okay.
And look at the damage he's taking even in victory.
Pedro was not. It's not like he beat to me, it wasn't like Jacare beating a Weidman level fighter last night. He beat Pedro, for all intents and purposes, was a young prospect. Or a younger prospect, at least, because he's 27. But we were hoping. We were basically hoping Pedro would maybe pan out and be a future contender for this
at least
division,
a top-level fighter.
Right. But we can't really consider Pedro, top 10.
I mean, at this point, he's barely top 15, even in this division.
But doesn't it... But Shogun able to do that to the young up-and-comer people were expecting him to lose to... You don't think it says anything about him at all?
I mean, again, he's still really hard to finish. He still has the fighter's mentality. And, I mean, again...
But he was able to finish Pedro.
Yeah, he's not shot. He's not a guy that I have concerns about the legitimacy of sanctioning a fight.
He's not Chuck Liddell quite yet.
No, I mean, yeah, he's not that. He is...
To me, he's a few steps above where Rashad Evans was at this point.
Yeah, I mean, he's a shell of his former self, but his former self was also, for many years, the best light heavyweight in the world.
I still... Who are the top 5 got?
I still wouldn't pick him against any one of the top 5 guys, I think, because you got... Let me see, it's Cormier, Jones, Gustafsson, Oezdemir, Anthony Smith... Or Smith.
He already lost.
Because Smith beat Oezdemir.
He's already lost most of those. I think Cormier would murderize him.
Daniel Cormier would ragdoll him and then kill him. John Jones might literally, figuratively, John Jones might literally beat him into a coma.
He had nothing for Jones, and he really had nothing for Gustafsson either.
No. Gustafsson would hurt him badly.
But I think it's also style-wise. I think he doesn't... I mean,
Anthony Smith already put him to sleep standing up, just destroyed him. Oezdemir would probably do the same.
But I mean, it's weird, because 5 years ago, would you ever have imagined Anthony Smith becoming, this good?
No, not really.
So it's weird. It's weird that way, is it not?
Yeah. I mean people take unexpected turns in this sport. I mean, Anthony Smith was a mid-level middleweight who became a really good light heavyweight. You want to know what's weird? Shogun's
I could be, one more fight and I'm back in the title mix.
And he's not wrong. That's the crazy thing.
That's what's ironic about all this, and you hating on Shogun.
I don't hate Shogun.
Yeah, I think you don't give him enough credit for what he was able to do.
When I said that Pedro should have won this fight, it's because I think based on how it played out, he had at least 2 opportunities to do so and made conscious decisions that led him away from victory. And it's a credit to Shogun that he stuck out through that and was able to capitalize as the fight went on.
Now, isn't it a little funny, though? Shogun wasn't he having a performance like this in the rematch with Dan Henderson? And then he ended up losing that fight.
No, he beat that rematch was going badly for Hendo. Shogun was chewing him up. And then he just, because he always uses the same guard position, Henderson was able to catch him.
Right. And that one happened in Brazil. So I will give Shogun this. It's like he's still athletic, and like you said, he's not quite shot yet. So he's competitive. I credit him because he's competitive.
Against a lot of the division, yeah, he is still competitive. And I mean, look, if you put him in there against Volkan Oezdemir, who's another, like, one of the only top guys he hasn't fought yet, and he beats Oezdemir, I mean, yeah, he's probably in the title picture. He's gonna die.
Who's the fight? Who is the guy I'm thinking? Is Krylov back in the UFC?
Yeah, he lost to Blachowicz. That's the other one I was forgetting of my potential top 5 guys. Yeah, I would actually drop Oezdemir from the top 5. Oezdemir would be 6 and Blachowicz would be 5.
Okay, so see, I don't. You know what? I think Blachowicz or Krylov could probably beat Shogun at this point. What do you think?
I mean, given Krylov's history of making bad decisions,
maybe Krylov would be maybe that would be a slightly more competitive fight, but
would I pick Blachowicz to beat Shogun at this point? Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Blachowicz, not that I think Blachowicz is a world beater, Robert, but I think that's probably a tougher fight for him at this point. Who's the other? What about him against Serkinov? That might not be a bad matchup right there.
No, I would favor Serkinov, but I mean, Serkinov's proven to be a little bit reckless with his offense, and Shogun's got a decent enough kind of pullback right.
That's why it might be a good fight for both guys,
Yeah.
That's why it might be more competitive than, say, a Blachowicz or Krylov type of fight. I wouldn't mind, honestly. I think I wouldn't mind that fight next for both guys.
Yeah, I mean, it gives Serkinov a chance to take out a legitimate legend, and it gives you a chance to take out another up and comer.
Yeah, and I mean a legend who's coming off of a win and is not like it's not like Tai Tuivasa beating up Arlovsky on like a 4-fight losing streak, right? This would be a much better feather for Serkinov to beat Shogun at this point. It would be a much better feather in his cap to rebuild himself as a UFC contender. And like you said, for Shogun, it's an opportunity to possibly beat a young up and comer. That's why I kind of like this fight.
Yeah, I'm down for that.
I feel like Shogun, if you really want to be a serious title contender again, you have to be able to beat a fighter like Serkinov.
Yeah, Serkinov or Oezdemir, I think if he wants to be in title contention, if he beats either of those guys, he's probably there.
I think Oezdemir sleeps Shogun.
Oh, I think he does too. But if we're talking about who do you want to beat to get into the title picture, one of those two, would probably do it.
I think
Oezdemir would beat him. Quite frankly, I favor Serkinov over him at this point as well. But
if Shogun stays relatively healthy, they might make those could probably be ESPN Plus main events coming up. We'll see.
Yeah. All right.
Look, I'm a longtime fan of Shogun, so I was, it did make me happy to see him.
If you watch this guy, if you've watched Shogun's career as long as you and I have, it's hard not to feel good when you see him win in some respects.
Some of his fights were my favorite fights. I was there live ringside for the first fight with Dan Henderson. It was my favorite fight ever.
His first fight with Machida is a really great fight. I mean, the first fight with Little Nog, of course, is an all-time classic.
I mean, he was a monster in Pride.
Oh yeah.
He was so young in Pride. And we all thought he was done after that loss to Forrest Griffin, and he derailed Machida. To me, that was huge because we thought at the time we thought Machida was gonna be the
guy.
the unbeatable dragon and take over the light heavyweight division for years, and he derailed all of that. So I mean, look, he held the light heavyweight belts in both Pride and UFC. That's pretty.
He was never the champion in Pride.
He won the Pride heavyweight middleweight Grand Prix. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, but
so
he never. That actual title was only ever held, I think, by Silva and Henderson.
Right. But he won. He was the Pride middleweight Grand Prix champion, though.
And at the time, he was regarded as the best 205-pound fighter in the world.
So
everyone thought the only thing stopping him beating Vanderlei was the fact that they wouldn't fight.
They threw out last night, like I think they said he was like fourth in finishes or something or other. Like, I mean, who cares about being fourth place in anything, you know?
Yeah. Well, the people have to come up with stats for the graphic.
I know, but like that's such a I mean, good for him and all, but like that's such a random stat. That's like what like if he was first, I can see that with being worth mentioning because but who cares that you're fourth place in like such and such. He's still. I think though, when all is said and done, he probably makes it into like a Hall of Fame. Yeah.
Oh yeah, on a first ballot Hall of Famer is Shogun. Absolutely.
Because I think when you consider the breadth and width of his career, you consider the Pride tournament win. All the
guys he beat for that tournament.
All right, the guys he beat.
What was it?
Pride,
Little Nog, Arona, and then Overeem.
Right? He beat Overeem twice. Had that classic fight with Little Nog. Classic fight with Dan Henderson.
Man. That tournament he won was stacked.
Honestly, and you know what makes me so angry? I thought that first fight with Machida was fantastic.
It was. It's a tremendous fight.
To me, that there was such a tremendous story in that fight. And you want to talk about technique and everything? To me, that fight was a clinic by Shogun. And it makes me sick that Cecil Peoples and just bad judging had to overshadow that decision. Because to me, that was like a masterclass by Shogun, who was the guy everyone was expecting to lose that fight. And by the end of it, everyone thought he had won, for the most part. But yeah.
Yeah, Tyson Pedro is basically, I think you said, the new James Tahuna, and
kinda.
I'm struggling to actively refute that.
He can come back from this. He has to work on. It's like Tuivasa. You got to work on those things.
But man, you demonstrate the same problem twice in a row in the same situation.
But look, Robert, he's still so inexperienced. This was like his 9th fight, I think.
Something like that.
This was his 10th. This was his 10th fight overall. To me, that's still not quite a lot,
It's not, and he came into the UFC for his 5th fight. Yeah, he's done.
Right. That's really not a lot, I think he can get better. He just has to work on those things.
I hope he does.
And it's possible because I think he does have a lot of promising qualities, but we'll see.
It takes a lot of skill to dive on Kimura rolls the way he does from every position.
Some guys are never able to fix their flaws, but they're able to just kind of focus on the things they're good at where they can avoid them, but we'll see. But man, the Australians did not have a good night last night.
There were exactly 2 Australians who won last night.
But in all
one of them was on the main card.
So it seems they lost all the really featured fights, did they not?
Yep. Because, and it's as good a segue as we're going to get, Justin Willis defeated Mark Hunt via unanimous decision, 29-28 across the board. Mark Hunt had a really good first round. He was landing some really nasty inside leg kicks, some good body kicks. And then between rounds, I don't know. He got the call that you're throwing the fight. I joke. I don't know what happened. But between rounds, his footwork, his general movement, his offense just went to hell. Justin Willis in the second round started jabbing, kept circling. I mean, he showed off. I kind of maligned his lead hand work going into this fight because in his previous bout it was pretty terrible. Came up tremendously in this fight. Had a really nice jab that he kept popping Mark Hunt with. Really, the way he constantly was turning and circling and just leading Mark Hunt. I mean, some of this was Mark Hunt's fault, but Willis just kept moving, jabbing, landing crosses on occasion. Just really educated left hand or right hand. Excuse me, he's a southpaw. Really good lead hand work from him in this fight, and just after that first round, Mark Hunt kind of seemed to have checked out, and Willis just kept hitting him consistently from angles, kept moving. Just a really solid performance from Willis, who is starting to emerge as a prospect. And then I know there were some heated exchanges in the build-up to this fight, but afterward, Willis just saying, I'm not going to say anything on the mic. This is Mark Hunt's time because it's his last fight in the UFC. Kind of a cool move. Again, Tuivasa called him out because he and, again, Mark Hunt are tight. So I don't hate that fight. Mark Hunt just stopped caring somewhere in the middle of this fight.
Willis, I mean, it wasn't an exceptional performance, but I was impressed with Willis this fight, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he does. I mean, his cardio was not bad.
No, and he moves. He's very light on his feet, especially for a guy with as much upper body weight as he carries.
Yeah. And I mean, that's an important quality to have, especially if you're fighting at heavyweight. So that Tuivasa fight might not be a bad idea, even with Tuivasa losing, because I mean Hunt. I think it was a decent matchup for a guy like Willis at this point because it was Hunt's probably last fight in the UFC. Hunt's getting up there in age, Robert. I mean, I've said in the past his career defies all logic.
He is the statistical outlier when we talk about like anything related to combat sports.
Right, pretty much.
Him and Lawler, man. Him and Robbie Lawler.
It was competitive. It was a
second acts.
Yeah, it was a fairly competitive fight. Willis looked good, but I don't think you want to throw him into too much deeper waters at this point. Hunt, whatever you do, just don't go to Oscar De La Hoya and Golden Boy MMA, please.
No,
don't fight Chuck Liddell.
If you want to stick with MMA, go to Ryzen. Or
go
to
fight
one.
Fedor again in Ryzen. He'll fight Fedor again in Ryzen. There you go.
I would be okay with that. On some levels. I mean, on some levels, as a fan of both guys, it's kind of sad.
I mean,
but
whatever he's done, I hope he's been able to save enough money so he and his family can live comfortably. Because I worry about his livelihood just a few years from now.
Well, he's got the gym that he runs in Australia, I think, or in New Zealand.
But I worry about him because his head is. I mean, I'm sure the dude's got a hard head, but I mean, he has taken so much damage over the years.
Watch his fight in Pride with Crow Cop. Dude gets kicked flush in the face several times.
I mean, the fight. The fight he had with Wanderlei. I think he ate some pretty just vicious. Didn't Crow Cop like axe kick him or something, and
yes.
He just ate it? He just ate it and walked through it, right?
He just ate he ate that. He also ate, I think, at one point, a full-on just left head kick from Mirko.
Yeah. Yeah. So insane. I mean, his head, right? So, ideally, I would like him to stop fighting Robert, just because of the amount of damage he's taken, and I don't want him to go to just these I'm not saying he should retire, but I don't want him to end up in I don't want him to be fighting like Chuck Liddell and Golden Boy MMA or Tito, and I just don't think it's worth it.
I mean, again, I'm with you. I hope he doesn't wind up like that because that's just sad.
Um,
But it
whatever.
does happen to a lot of guys in this sport. Let's see. We also had, oh yes, the former Tony, now Anthony Rocco Martin, put Jake Matthews to sleep with an anaconda choke in the third round. Um, I've been sleeping on Martin a little bit, I think. He seems to have found his stride recently, man. I mean, he debuted with 2 losses in the UFC in 2 tough fights. He fought Rashid Magomedov and Beneil Dariush back-to-back. Lost to Leonardo Santos, who is another tough out. Santos is never lost in the UFC, 16-3-1 overall. Jeez, what is he doing? Because he should be fighting.
He's
Okay, he's got a hand injury that stopped his last fight. Anyway,
right.
so point is, tough fighters. Won 3 in a row, lost to Olivier Aubin-Mercier, moved back up to welterweight, and has won 3 in a row and finished his last 2. Again, I might have been sleeping on this guy.
He's been doing well at welterweight, at least, and he had an impressive performance last night. It was a good fight.
It was it was a good fight, and I mean that the transition to that anaconda choke that he hit is a really nasty one that I saw. I first saw it, I think, when on a Ben Askren tape study at BJJ Scouts specifically. I think the last part he has on Askren talked about essentially this transition. Martin did a little differently. Martin kind of dropped Matthews, had Matthews hurt to one of the legs from calf kicks, and Matthews kind of like reached for a takedown, fell onto his knees. Martin faked taking the back, and wound up getting a really interesting ride position, and this is a collegiate wrestling ride that, again, Askren, I'm going to defer to this in terms of phraseology, refers to it as the assassin. Now, in collegiate wrestling, you use it to roll for a pin, but because of the arm positioning involved, in MMA, you can transition into the anaconda choke very, very quickly and very easily. I think it was Alex Perez, actually, who hit essentially this same move, that same position into the anaconda choke in his UFC debut. It's a nasty one. It's one you have to really be ready for, because if you're not, it develops very quickly. And he put Matthews to sleep with it. He, after the fight, mentioned that, guys like him and Matthews are kind of poster children for why there should be a 165-pound division. I'm not sure how I feel about that division. I mean, if you're going to add a new one, that is the division to add, because it's between the 2 most populous and 2 of the 3 most talent-rich divisions in the UFC. And I think Martin would be a good fit for that division. Matthews might, but he's put on a lot of muscle mass recently. He might just be better off at welterweight. So, I don't know if if that division is in the future or not, but Martin had a solid performance here. He seems to really be excelling at welterweight, and I'm done sleeping on that guy if nothing else, because he made me look foolish for the last time. And really, yeah, we're calling him Rocco because look at those sideburns, man. Those are some Italian level sideburns. Anyway, Jeff, what are your thoughts on this one?
I thought it was a good fight. Martin looked good. I want to see where he goes from here. Put together a nice little winning streak, so like the finishing sequence.
All right. Next up, we had Sadiq Yusuf, who defeated Suman Mokhtarian via TKO in the first round. A few people not happy with this stoppage. I'm okay with it. Yusuf just fast hands and power in his strikes. Still raw, pretty clearly, but young in his career, young in the sport. A lot of room to grow, but someone we might want to be paying attention to. I mean, he clipped Mokhtarian a couple of times, got him against the fence, and just started teeing off. Good.
I was
shot
fine
selection.
with it because, like, look, you have to intelligently defend yourself, and even if you're standing up and you're just getting blasted, sometimes the referee has to step in, right?
Yeah, I mean, if Mokhtarian had still been moving or done something other than just cover up, I mean, if he couldn't move off the fence because he didn't have his balance,
Mm-hmm.
hey, that contributes to why the fight was stopped. And it's not like Yusuf didn't give him an out. There was a pretty clear angle he could have ducked and taken off to, this would be Mokhtarian's right, to kind of circle away from that immediate pressure and the offense he was throwing. And if he'd kept moving and still had his feet under him, the fight would have continued. But just covering up and putting his back on the fence like that as Yusuf just teased off to, body, head, uppercut. Again, I was okay with the stoppage. It didn't bother me that much. Was it a touch early? Maybe you could argue that, but it was early on the safe side of caution, not early. Why did you stop it early?
Is that for me? I don't really. I was fine with it,
Oh,
really.
no, yeah, just that was something else that had come up from there. So, any other thoughts you have?
No.
All right, and kicking off the main card, we had our only main card Aussie win. Mokhtarian, Tuivasa, New Zealand, Australia. Pedro, New Zealand, Australia. Hunt, New Zealand, Australia. Matthews, Australia. Mokhtarian, Australia. Jimmy Crute defeated Paul Craig via Kimura in the third round. This was our first finish of the evening. It was just a mediocre light heavyweight fight. Craig kept trying to force grappling, but Craig's got gas tank issues after the first round. Crute caught a Kimura from topside, from side control. Craig got half guard back, but if you want to get half guard, you actually need some form of control over their hips and upper body to nullify elements of the Kimura's success. He didn't. Crute just kind of yanked his arm behind his back and then was able to lean both of their body weight onto it, so it wasn't just his arm applying pressure. He kind of leaned on it, and the combined weight of those two guys was enough to force the submission. So I don't know that Crute's got, he got hit a few times. He was in some bad spots. He fought through it, but it was just kind of your mediocre light heavyweight fight on a card that had a few of those. Jeff, you got anything for this one?
I thought it was a decent fight, at least. Nothing special.
All right. On the main card, Alexei Kunchenko put a pretty serious beating on Yushin Okami, 30-26 twice and won 30-27. Not a great fight, but Kunchenko is 20-0, 2-0 in the UFC now. Let's get him someone who isn't, a fading veteran like Alves or Okami to fight. I'm curious to see what he'd do in that situation. Wilson Hayes defeated Ben Wynn via unanimous decision, 30-27 across the board. I actually gave Wynn, I think, the first round. But the best Hayes has looked in a while. He had some good head movement. His gas tank didn't fade. He looked pretty good, all things considered. Keita Nakamura defeated Salim Tuhari via split decision. This was just kind of there. Great fight between Kai Kara-France and Elias Garcia. France wins via unanimous decision, 230-25s and 130-26. Pity we're losing this division, man. This was fun. There were a lot of scrambles. Garcia seems a bit more... How do I say this? When I say gimmicky, I don't mean bad, but he does seem to be a lot of catch guys in transition, but once things slow down and things have to be methodical, he suffers. And Kara-France, again, just put a pretty serious beating on him. I think I was 30-25 actually. One-sided affair. Really good debut for Kara-France. Christos Yagos defeated Mizuto Hirota via unanimous decision. 29-28, 29-27, and 30-28. I'm not sure which round would have been 10-10 or which round would have been 10-8 for that matter. Mediocre fight. Damir Ismagulov defeated Alex Georgiev via unanimous decision, 30-25, 30-26, and 30-26. Georgiev is not a UFC caliber fighter. He took this fight on short notice. It was a replacement fighter, I seem to recall. Yeah, this fight actually started life as Ross Pearson versus Joe Duffy. Pearson got pulled out. Ismagulov stepped in. Duffy pulled out. Georgiev stepped in. Ismagulov needs some work still, but looks like he might be at least ready to be generally in the UFC. Georgiev looks like a guy who watches too much footage of the Diaz brothers. Wipeout for Ismagulov. Absolute wipeout. All right, Jeff. Again, there were some things in there on the prelims that were all right. What sticks out in your mind?
Nothing.
All righty then. Again, thanks to everyone who followed along with my coverage of that event. Always appreciated. Let's see. Let's move on to 231.
Hooray!
Next Saturday.
The real meat and potatoes.
Fight Night UFC.
The best card of the year. Yes.
I'm not sure I buy that.
I'm going to buy it.
I mean, the top two fights are spectacular. Looking at the rest of that card.
It's a good card.
It's not bad.
It's a very good card. You're just spoiled with all the MMA.
No, I'm just hypercritical. The amount that I consume is...
All right. You do watch a lot, thankfully.
I do. All right, anyway, main event.
Holloway
One of the best fights I think you can make in all of MMA. Certainly the best featherweight fight. They've tried to make this before, and it's fallen apart, which both times made me horribly sad. But featherweight champion Max Holloway
could still fall apart next weekend.
It could. I'm hoping it won't, but I hope they have a
backup.
backup.
It happen just hours before. Hours. Main event's falling apart.
Apparently, Renato Moicano will serve as the replacement fighter for whatever half of the main event falls out if it does. Moicano was supposed to fight Mirsad Bektic on this card, which is a really good fight, actually. Bektic had to pull out, which sucks, because I like Bektic. But Moicano is your alternate for the main event.
Not the worst choice.
I mean, he's on a pretty big winning streak. He's a legitimate top 5, I think, featherweight in the world.
Yeah.
So, I can dig it. I've talked about this fight before, and I don't think anything has changed. These are two guys who get better as the fight goes on, which is a rarity, but they both do it in different ways. Max Holloway, again, a sublime talent in the world of mixed martial arts. Strikes equally well, essentially, from both orthodox or southpaw. Reads you very, very well minute to minute and adjusts to you.
Knockout power. Very good in the clinch. I think his clinch game is very underrated.
It is, then he should also avoid the clinch in this fight at essentially all costs. But, yeah, a good clinch game. He doesn't have, necessarily one shot, one kill knockout power, but he's very, very accurate, and he does... And again, when I say...
He does damage.
He does... Yeah,
he does damage.
He does a lot of damage. That's very true.
Both very well-rounded. Ortega might even be a little more well-rounded than Holloway.
If we're just equalizing the skills, yeah, he might, because his ground game is so good.
He has
Holloway,
I think, does have a good ground game. We just don't see it a lot.
No, and a lot of it's also predicated on hurting you and getting you to the ground, and he's also just more comfortable on the feet. I mean, there's not too many people that he's going to be shooting a double leg on. Again, then you have Ortega, who... I think Ortega hits harder than Max Holloway, but not nearly as polished. Again, Ortega's grappling is the great equalizer because it is so, so good. And he catches stuff from places you don't think he will. I mean, the guillotine that he caught on Cub Swanson, he caught in a second. And just not a spot that you would normally be worried about that from. He grabs it, and a veteran like Swanson winds up, having to tap out. Knocked out Frankie Edgar with a really nice uppercut from kind of a clinch break. I mean, that was a clinch he enforced after wobbling him with a head and an elbow. God, Why did I not remember that? He caught Edgar coming in with an elbow strike. These are the two best guys in this division. These are two of the better guys in the sport, if we're talking technique. I lean towards Holloway slightly because Max Holloway's won 12 fights in a row. He's beat the best featherweight of all time twice. You
want to know what's crazy in all of this? Holloway's younger than Ortega.
Yeah, Max Holloway's he started fighting very young, whereas Ortega moved into MMA a little bit later. I cannot wait for this fight. I am
only by about like 8 months, but like he's still younger.
Yeah. The crazy thing about...
He's younger. Yeah.
Go ahead.
He's younger than Ortega by about 8 months, basically.
Yeah.
Or no, more like 10 months. Excuse me.
So crazy. One of the things about this fight, I can see multiple ways for both guys to win. The idea of either of them losing is something difficult to wrap my head around because they are both so good. I cannot wait for this fight. Please, please hold together.
Who are you picking, Robert?
I favor Holloway just a little bit.
Okay.
I think his work rate is something Ortega hasn't really had to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, that's not true. Rephrase. I think the fact that
he did fight Frankie Edgar, and Frankie has a very good...
Oh, I mean, he knocked out Frankie, he knocked out Clay Guida. And Clay Guida is ineffective frantic energy, but frantic energy. So let me rephrase. I think he's going to have the specific style of work rate that Max Holloway brings, less so than just a frantic pace. Max is consistent with his output. He's also intelligent with his output. It's not a lot of rote memorization and repetition, which is what guys like Guida and Edgar do. They do a lot of the same thing as they try to get the desired reaction. Both guys fight out of both stances. Both guys switch. I mean, Holloway's a lot more picky about it. Ortega does a lot of just stance switching. I mean, it's all for a purpose, but Holloway fights from both stances, but he tends to spend more time in one and then switch mid-combination and then end up back in that stance if that's the one that he likes for the fight in particular. But Holloway's deadly from either stance. He fought Pettis, I think, just southpaw the entire time, and then fought Aldo orthodox essentially the entire time and beat both of them handily. Again, love this fight. Picking Holloway, but if Ortega wins, I won't be surprised at all.
It's very hard for me because it's hard for me to ignore all the issues Holloway's had in the last year that have kept him from fighting again. Just because, he's had health-related issues. Is it because of the weight cutting? Is it because of concussions or training? So it's hard, when we hear all that to just completely ignore all that. At the same time, I'm still picking Holloway to win this just because of his style, his technique, and accuracy. I just think matches up with Ortega better and favors Holloway, and that's why I'm picking Holloway. And quite frankly, I just can't pick against him. I've always just struggled to pick against Holloway for the past several years when he's been on this run.
I agree. I mean, again, it's not that he's fighting guys you'd be surprised to see win, but if you're just looking at it on paper, how do I pick against Max Holloway?
Well, I felt strongly that he was a guy tailor-made to beat Jose Aldo, and I was correct there, and he did it twice.
Yeah.
Like, whoever beat Jose Aldo, let alone beat him twice?
One guy real early in his career, and then Conor, and that's it. And then Holloway, of course.
And Holloway's the only guy who's beaten him twice, correct? Yeah. And I mean, Frankie Edgar couldn't even beat him once.
Nope.
and at the time, we thought Frankie would probably be the tougher fight for Jose. And then Connor had that knockout. But even Chad Mendes seemed like a strong, tough opponent for Jose. Couldn't even get it done. So, yeah, I'm going with Holloway here. I just I like everything that Holloway does. I will say he does make his defense a little open a bit at times, and he does play a little loose with his defense, which could be very dangerous against Ortega. But especially when I hear, he's had like concussions or weight cutting issues, that could be, because we know it's not good for your brain to be cutting weight and dehydrating yourself like that. So it could be very dangerous if he tries something like that against Ortega. But disregarding all that, I don't like picking against him here, even against Ortega. You can't tell me Ortega is not an outstanding athlete and martial artist, Robert, because he is.
No, Ortega's phenomenal.
Ortega has more than earned this spot in title fight. But I struggle to believe he can beat Max Holloway. But I guess I can see it happening. I just can't bring myself to pick against Max.
Yeah.
I just can't.
If you ask me, can Brian Ortega win and how can he do it, I can give you a couple of different ways.
Yeah, I feel like on the ground,
that said, I still can't pick against Max.
I think in a ground battle, if he's somehow on top or catches,
he can do it from the bottom. Ortega's guard is nasty.
Now we know Ortega. His striking is dangerous as well. Now we know
Max could walk into something that he doesn't see coming.
Who knocked out? That was the first time Frankie was ever knocked out, right?
First time Frankie was ever stopped. Period.
Yeah, and he did that standing up.
Yep.
When we'd known Frankie for years as just having this, not like knockout power, but he always had great boxing, technique, footwork throughout his career. So that's huge to me. So I could see it even happening standing up. But in terms of the technique and the striking style, I just like Holloway a little bit better. And I don't want to be colored by the recent injury reports and rumors. So Holloway it is. I might be regretting it next weekend, but I'm picking Holloway.
Hey, I'm picking Holloway too. And I might look, as long as these two get in the cage and fight, I don't care if I'm wrong about this one.
Honestly, I feel a lot stronger about the next title fight, about who I think is going to win.
Yeah, I'm curious to see where you've landed on this one. But we have Valentina for the vacant women's flyweight title. Valentina Shevchenko will take on former women's strawweight champion Joanna Jędrzejczyk. This one, let me tell you why I'm torn. Not because if I just look at this and analyze each woman's skills, their history, their recent history in MMA, etc., 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 I always arrive at essentially the same conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately for me, I also have these profound memories of a similar situation where I look at everything, arrive at the same conclusion, and then go that way, and it winds up biting me in the ass. So I'm colored not by the data, but by instances where a similar scenario to this has made me feel like an idiot because I've forgotten something or I've overlooked something. Because on paper, and based on experience between these two fighters, Valentina should win this fight. She's beaten Joanna several times in Muay Thai competition. She's the slightly larger woman in terms of frame. I mean, they're not that dissimilar in height and reach, but Valentina is the bigger woman.
Both have world-class cardio. Never get tired.
Yep, both have fought for 5 rounds several times. Both have exceptional striking.
Kickboxing.
And
know how to throw combinations.
Yeah. There's a couple of reasons I'm going with Valentina here.
Okay.
One is their history, because Valentina has beaten her every time they fought.
Granted, in a totally different sport.
Totally different sport, absolutely true, but those, and in fairness, a couple of those weren't all that close. Like, that's just, Valentina was just better. Now, again, years ago, in Muay Thai, the fact that they both still rely heavily on essentially the same skill set is why I think that does play a factor. Valentina's also a counter striker by nature, more so than all the a very aggressive fighter necessarily, which has given Joanna some trouble in the past. She's been countered. Rose baited her into stuff.
And Joanna is also a slow starter.
Yeah,
That's
Joanna
another
likes
thing.
to try and read things. The southpaw, I think, might give Joanna problems. Joanna marks up very easily. In fights she has won, clearly. The Letourneau fight, the Andrade fight. What was the other one?
Gedelia? Maybe?
No.
Kovalkiewicz?
Yeah, I think that one. She doesn't get hit that often, but when she does, it leaves
I remember one fight she won, one title defense. She had like a really big bump on her head.
Andrade. Like the one punch Jessica Andrade landed.
Right.
There's this huge knot on her forehead. She just marks up rather easily.
Her
and
run, though.
That can be a consideration when you're fighting an accurate striker.
But she did so well, I almost thought she was never going to lose the belt, you know?
Then Rose finds this really nice counter, here's the other reason. I think a lot of Rose's success against Joanna is just stylistic, because Rose is a long woman. Her arms and legs are just longer than you think they are. Got a little spider monkey kind of thing going on there.
Yeah.
And Rose trained with Valentina for that fight.
But Rose also gets better almost each time out, don't you agree?
Yeah, Rose has been improving.
Because Rose started out in the UFC really early, you know?
Oh yeah, very young.
Rose is still only 8-3 in her career.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that. That's excluding the tough fights, but still.
Well, no one counts those except the UFC on occasion.
Even Joanna had more fights when she came into the UFC, basically.
Yeah. And a much longer history in combat sports
general. Yeah. So she had a much stronger base in combat sports than Rose. So I just feel like with each win you're seeing just more improvement from Rose as well.
Yeah. The other thing I like about Valentina in this fight is how light she is on her feet. Again, another thing that Rose had a lot of success against Joanna with was Joanna moves very well with her feet normally. The immediate starching from the first fight with Namajunas notwithstanding, in the rematch she did moved much better. But she's not light on her feet. She relies a lot more on proper footwork than she does, kind of bouncing. She's very on her heels in a lot of respects.
She generally does well against much bigger women. You know?
In some cases.
Yeah. Amanda, Holly.
She needs to be the bigger woman.
Wasn't she the smaller girl against Amanda and Holly, though?
Oh, sorry. I thought you said Joanna.
I mean Valentina.
Yeah, no. Valentina, sorry. Yeah. Valentina, smaller than Amanda, smaller than Holly. A little bit smaller than even, why am I blanking on this? Venezuela. God, why can't I remember her name? The girl she armbarred from guard. Juliana Pena.
Yeah.
God. Yeah, she was smaller than Pena. Valentina just has a lot of technical proficiency when it comes to that. And,
I like Valentina.
Yeah.
I look, I love Joanna, and it's nothing.
I'm a fan of Joanna's too.
It's nothing personal. I just think, in terms of skill matchups, I like Valentina a little bit more. Now, granted, Joanna does have a very good sprawl. She's very good in the clinch. I think Valentina is too.
If this hits the ground, Valentina has a significant advantage, I think, because Valentina's shown off a pretty good ground game, whereas Joanna's is mostly ability to wall
in the
walk.
past at strawweight, I think Joanna's done a very good job of kind of dictating where the fight goes.
Yeah, either that and her ability to regain her feet, especially against fighters like Esparza or Gadelha, who have very good top control, was really impressive.
But I've also seen her manage to kind of just usually defend the takedowns really well, or recover from them, or even just kind of keep the fight standing up. But this is a whole new weight class for her. It's her fighting at flyweight for the first time. Now, granted, Valentina only had one other fight against Priscilla Cachoeira.
Cachoeira. I don't know why it's pronounced. Joanna's fought at flyweight before.
That was a one-sided massacre.
No. Look, Cachoeira was like the Uber driver for another fighter. I can't even call that a
straight-up fight. That was like a tough enough fight. The MMA organization.
Yeah, that fight, like, borderline should not have been sanctioned. It was such a mismatch.
It was a total mismatch. This is not a mismatch to me, but I don't know. I'm just leaning toward Valentina. I just think...
I mean, by most metrics, she comes out just a little bit ahead in all of them.
I just think... I think it'll probably go 5 rounds, but I think Valentina's just going to edge it out just because with the way she fights. I think it'll be a good fight, though, or at least I hope it will. But I like that this fight is... I'm happy the fight is happening because at one point it was going to be... What was it? The girl who fought a couple weeks ago. From Ultimate Fighter. Who was it, Robert?
Hang on. Which one?
Who was she like... They announced the fight with Joanna, then they changed it to...
Eubanks. It was going to be...
Eubanks. Holy, that was going to be a main event. They were going to book it, and Eubanks missed weight. I mean, what a... Oh, God.
And let's be very clear about this. Sijara Eubanks has almost no shot at beating Valentina Shevchenko.
I almost think the UFC just put that in as the main event just to have, like, a placeholder. I don't even think they were serious about that.
I maintain they were just testing the waters like that. Let's just float this idea and see if people respond, and everyone universally took a dump on it.
I mean, but even that to me is somewhat audacious. You know, it's like,
hey, what were the repercussions? What's the downside? They didn't go through with it.
I mean, to me, the downside is you tick off Joanna.
No, if they'd gone through with it, yes, but she's still fighting for the title.
Was very outspoken and angry about it. And when have you ever heard Joanna utter a bad word against the UFC beforehand?
No, that was the first time. She's not.
Yeah.
She and Dana are kind of. I don't know if they're actually buddies or not, but that was the first time she felt mistreated by the UFC, and she was not shy about making it known.
Right. I mean, like, she never complained. She'd never complained about her treatment or even her pay before. You know, she's generally been positive about it. So, I mean, to me, that's not good to treat an athlete and fighter the caliber Joanna that way, who's been a loyal soldier to you. It's just not, to me, it's not a good looks. But whatever. Moving on, picking Valentina. But,
yeah, that either goes the distance or... I wouldn't be shocked if Joanna gets cut and it's just bad enough to force the stoppage.
Let me just say this. If Joanna does find ways to win, it wouldn't surprise me in this fight either.
That's true.
Look, and you want to know why? Because Joanna is a championship-level fighter. She's good at fighting for 5 rounds.
And she's really good about winning rounds. I mean, that's like her biggest asset is the fact that she can just win rounds over time.
And she's fought more UFC title fights and won more than Valentina, and she's also not cutting. She'll be cutting less. Excuse me. She'll be cutting less weight for this fight as well. So, that might not mean anything, but she has a lot. She has a lot of things going for her is in her favor. But,
I mean, she could be the first woman to hold belts in 2 different weight classes in the UFC.
All right. I kind of like this next fight too.
I don't know, man.
Not a great
I've
fight.
gone back and forth on this one. Alex Oliveira is fighting Gunnar Nelson, who... Gunnar Nelson looks ripped, man. Have you seen some of the photos of him lately?
No.
He's never had that much physical
He hasn't
definition.
fought in a while. Man, he's been out for quite a bit.
He's been out since July of last year.
Oh.
When Ponzinibbio
it
knocked him
felt
out
like
by
we haven't
poking him in
seen
the
it.
eye.
I haven't seen any recent pictures of him. If you want to send some,
there was one I saw very recently. He is shredded, man. He has changed his physique pretty drastically. He's
always been in very reasonably good shape. So
I'm sure he just hasn't necessarily. Again, like
hey,
he's fought 5 rounds in the past. I mean, again, he's been a conditioned athlete.
You forced me to go to. Damn. He does look yoked here.
Yeah, I mean. Look up how he looks.
I like this because I mean, at least he hasn't used this layoff to get like fat and out of shape, you know.
No, he's put some time into the gym and whatnot. He's fighting Alex Oliveira, who's just a really, I mean, Alex Oliveira to me is one of those like definitionally rough and tumble fighters, you know. Like wherever the fight goes, he's gonna fight you.
Mm-hmm.
He's on a really good overall winning streak. His only loss recently was to Yancy Medeiros. That's his only loss since returning to welterweight.
And Medeiros was having at the time he was having a bit of a run. He was having a bit of a thing at the time.
Beat Carlos Condit, knocked out Carlos Pedersoli Jr. That was supposed to be Neil Magny. To me, this is all about whether or not Nelson can force this fight to the ground in advantageous positions for himself. If he does the karate bounce...
It's so weird, because Nelson has been... Like, he has world-class grappling, and he came into the UFC, and looked like he was on the road to contendership. Lost that... He lost a 5-round fight to Rick Story, where, Rick Story was a pretty underrated opponent at the time, so I'll give him that. And he's kind of been a little hit and miss.
The Maya loss kind of set him back a bit.
Yeah. He's been a little hit and miss since then, but I feel like this is a good match. To me, this matchup, he's tailor-made to win this. To me, this is his fight to lose.
I think that's kind of what they're going for. I'm torn about this though, because if he does that the karate bounce that he does with his hands down, wide stance, to kind of lunge in,
right?
Oliveira's the kind of guy who's going to crack you when you do that, pretty consistently.
To me, though, Oliveira doesn't have that high of a fight IQ. Like, I think Oliveira is good, but I think he's also prone to making mistakes.
Yeah. And he can be out-grappled.
Yeah. Like, Cerrone out-grappled him. I mean...
we have to go way back for the Gilbert Burns fight.
And that wasn't that long ago. It was in 2015.
Well,
so,
Burns is also... the best pure grappler, the best jiu-jitsu guy at lightweight.
Burns is probably pretty underrated as well, I would think.
Severely. I mean, his grappling is... He's a multiple-time world champion at both gi and no-gi. Durinho will mess you up on the ground, man.
Yeah, I'm picking Gunnar Nelson. I think... To me, this is like more striker versus grappler. Got to go with the grappler.
I'm kind of leaning towards Oliveira, actually, but I'm going to be rooting for Gunnar.
Just because of the way Gunnar uses his grappling technique. And
that and the way he strikes. I don't like it versus Oliveira.
That is an area he's needed to work on. I agree. And look, here's one thing you can't deny. When Gunnar rises to the occasion, he is a cold-blooded killer.
Yeah, he does not care one bit what he does to you in there. Doesn't bother him at all.
And he is he's a very good submission artist as well.
Yep.
Because let's see, how many submission victories does he have?
A few.
He has 12 submission victories. He has quite a few in the UFC. So he has 1, 2, 3, 4. Half of his submission victories have been inside the octagon. Against, I would say, some decent level when he fought them, I felt like they were decent opposition. Alan Jouban, tough opponent. Not a great grappler, but a tough opponent. Albert Tumanov, I think a solid.
I picked Tumanov in that fight. Tumanov's
Yeah.
still doing good work. Out in the he's in I think ACB at the moment.
And Brandon Thatch, Thatch didn't pan out, but
Thatch
out. But when he had those fights, I think they were decent wins. So, I'm picking Gunnar Nelson by submission. There you go. I'm sticking with that.
That's fair. All right, Hakeem Dawodu is on this card because he's Canadian. I mean, he's 1-1 in the UFC. They had to bring in a career can like Austin Arnett to get him a win. And he's
Toronto deserves a good card like this. They really do.
I'm not knocking the city, man. I'm just saying this fight. I like Kyle Botniak here. He's been trading wins and losses in the UFC, but if you look at who
his opponent is Canadian.
Yeah, but
wait. I'm saying no.
Botniak's from Boston, man.
Botniak isn't. Dawodu is.
Yeah. Botniak's, again, he's been trading wins and losses, but his losses are to tough guys. I mean, Charles Rosa, and there's an argument he won that fight. Was it that? No, sorry, different fight. The Charles Rosa fight was a good fight. Jeremy Kennedy's a tough guy. Lost to Zabit and gave Zabit a really tough time.
He'll win this fight.
I kind of like Botniak here.
Yeah, I agree. Dawodu, he's 8-1-1. Like, the biggest name I'm seeing on his resume is Steven Seiler.
That's probably accurate.
He's 1-1
That is just no good.
He's 1-1 in the UFC and lost to a cab driver named Danny Henry. Yeah, I'm picking Botniak.
And kicking off the main card, we have
There's
Jimmy Manawa fighting Thiago Santos.
This is a good fight.
This was supposed to take place. This is a reschedule. Wasn't Manawa supposed to fight Santos in Santos' last fight, and then Eric Anders wound up stepping in on short notice?
I think so. Let me check. He was supposed, at September at Fight Night
137.
Yeah.
Thought it was a good fight then. I think it's a good fight now.
Yeah.
Both power strikers.
Santos is underrated. He's good,
Yeah, they're both powerful strikers. They both Mano was a bit more punch heavy, whereas Santos uses his legs a lot more. I expect someone to go to sleep.
I'm picking Santos. I'm picking Santos to get the knockout win.
Yeah, assuming his chin issues don't rear their head at light heavyweight. I like Santos here as well. Not Dos Santos. Yeah. I like Santos as well. I like his diversity of offense, and I think
he's underrated.
A bit too predictable.
Like I don't think he's like an elite opponent, but I think he's a tough, underrated opponent that you can't sleep on in this type of fight.
And being just kind of tough and underrated at light heavyweight will get you.
I mean, he's won 6 out of his last 7.
Yeah. And that
even at light heavyweight, and he beat Anthony Smith.
Yeah, when they fought at middleweight, yeah.
No, was that fight at middleweight?
Yeah, that was I think the fight that precipitated Smith's move up to 205.
Yeah, you are right. That fight was Yeah, I like this fight. I like the fight. It's a pretty good opening fight. We've seen some openers, I think, on the main cards recently that I'm like, why is this the opener? This, I understand why it's the opener.
I mean, someone's very likely going to sleep in that fight.
Both guys are exciting fighters. UFC veterans. I'm fine with this being the main opener. Dawodu Botniak, I don't know why that's on the main card, especially when you have a fight like Gedelia versus Ansarov. That probably should be on the main card.
Quite frankly, if I were to pick a fight from the undercard to be on the main card, I'd actually go onto Fight Pass and pick Devin Clark versus Alexander Rakic.
Why?
Because I like Rakic. He's on a really good winning streak.
That's such a random. That's
It
such
is.
a random pick.
It is, but that's hey. Hey, look. If I get to pick one, that's the one I'd pick.
Okay. I mean,
No, no, no. Sorry. Uh, Aubin Mercier versus Burns. That's the one I'd pick.
I think Aubin Mercier is another underrated fighter.
Yeah. OAM and Gilbert Burns. That's the one I'd put on the main card.
Yeah. Honestly, good fighters on the prelims. To be perfectly honest with you,
There's a couple that are kind of random, but there's a few that are pretty good. All right. As for the prelims, we have the aforementioned fight between Claudia Gadelha and Nina Ansaroff.
like, I didn't want to talk about the prelims for the last fight at all, but like these are all really solid prelims to me.
Gadelha needs a win kind of here. She lost that fight to Jessica Andrade. She did not look all that good against Esparza. I'll give her some credit because she tweaked her knee in that fight, pretty badly. But she needs to get back on. She needs another win here if she wants to get a fight with Rose. And quite frankly, because Andrade is going to be the one fighting Rose. But, I mean, I like Andrade in that fight, but I think Ansarov's going to have a tough time here. I kind of like Gadelha. I think
Gadelha is going to smoke her.
A lot of that's going to depend on Ansarov's footwork. If Ansarov can keep off of the fence, she'll have a lot of success. But as soon as they hit the fence, I think she's in a bad spot.
Ansarov is dead meat. I'm sorry.
Caitlin Chukagian will fight Jessica Ai. This fight will suck. Neither of these two are all that good. Ai's 1-2.
Ai's on a winning streak. She's on a winning streak.
See, Ai has not lost since returning to flyweight.
She's found her weight class.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't like Jessica Ai. And Chukagian's
also on a winning streak.
On a 3-fight winning streak.
4-1 in the UFC.
Just neither of them are all that good, is all. Like, their fights suck. Chukagian spends 80% of her fights shadow boxing, and Jessica Ai is a nutcase. I can't pick Jessica Ai, just generally. I got Chukagian. Eric Anders and Elias Theodorou
This is a decent fight.
Is a surprisingly good fight. Theodorou's on a 2-fight winning streak, beat Trevor Smith. This is really speculative on my part because Anders is coming off of that loss to Santos.
Theodorou is 7-2.
Yeah. I'm going with Anders here. Theodorou's going to have a good first round and then slow down like he always does, despite commentary telling me how great his conditioning is. And visibly slowing down.
Don't forget his hair.
Oh, he has great hair. He has the best hair in MMA. I like Anders. I think Anders is going to catch him with something.
I'm picking Theodorou.
That's the smarter pick. Be very clear about that. That's absolutely the smarter pick. Olivier Aubin Mercier is fighting Gilbert Burns.
Great matchup.
Mercier lost to Alex Hernandez.
This fight has fight of the night potential.
Yeah. I like Burns. Burns hits harder. Burns got knocked out by Dan Hooker, but Dan Hooker's kind of a beast, man. Dan Hooker's been looking great as of late. Dan Hooker's a scary guy. Burns knocked out Sago, knocked out Moret.
Hooker's like on his way right now. He's won his last 4, finished all those fights.
He hasn't lost since returning to lightweight, has Dan Hooker.
Right, no.
Now, I like Burns here, man. He's been bringing up his hands, and his jiu-jitsu game is, again, multiple-time world champion Gian Nogi. I like Burns.
He's underrated for sure. I always like watching his fights.
I'm not sure that the bout order for the Fight Pass here is listed correctly, but we'll go with what's on Wiki. Devin Clark and Alexander Rakic. I like this fight. Rakic kind of sold me a little bit on his ability in his last fight. And I mean, light heavyweight needs good guys who will be there for a while. I'm kind of looking forward to that, and I've got him here. I don't think Devin Clark is all that good. Clark is 3-2 in the UFC. Yeah, but he's lost anyone who's any good. I mean, he beat guys who aren't in the UFC anymore, basically. Yeah. I like Rakic there. I'm curious to see what he'll do. Brad Katona fights Matthew Lopez. Lopez is on a 2-fight losing streak. He got knocked out by Rafael Assunção and knocked out by Alejandro Perez. He is 2-3 overall in the UFC, and we have Katona, who has fought in the UFC before. Yes, he was on... Yeah, he won some crappy season of Tough, didn't he? Yeah, the last one, 27.
Ugh.
With nothing but wrestling, yeah, because he...
dear Lord.
I remember that fight now. Thanks for that. Yeah, Lopez, please. I don't want more of Brad Katona. Chad Laprise fights Diego Lima. Diego Lima is the lesser Lima, and I think we'll lose here. I don't think Diego Lima has ever won in the UFC. He has not, actually, now that I look at it. This is kind of a gimme for Laprise, who's... someone the Canadian fans like. And Carlos Diego Ferreira fights Jesse Ronson. Ronson is making his UFC... No. He's fought in the UFC before. He went 0-3. All 3 split decisions. He lost to Michel Prazeres, Francisco Trinaldo, and Kevin Lee. That's a rough lineup, man. If those are the 3 guys you have to fight in your UFC career, that's rough. Those are 3 really talented guys. Anyway, he's back. Ferreira... Had such high hopes for Ferreira at one point, but... I'll go with Ferreira here. I'm not sure. I think he'll beat Ronson. All right. Again, there's a few sneaky good fights on there. So, what do you want to touch on, Jeff?
The FS1 prelims are great. The rest,
Yeah, there's 3 good fights on the FS1 prelims. Again, Chikagian and I think is going to suck.
I like the FS1 prelims though. It's a good. It's
pretty good. I'm not displeased with those.
I mean, getting 3 out of 4 matchups like that on the FS1. I mean, it's better than what we've had for the last couple days.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Anyway, that will be again Saturday. Let's all hope the main event holds together because I salivate at that fight.
Stay healthy, Max Holloway. Stay healthy. Don't fail a drug test, Brian Ortega.
Yeah, I love that fight so much. Please don't let it. He's finished all of his wins. Holy crap!
Yeah.
I had forgotten that. Brian Ortega has finished every opponent he's fought in the UFC.
Yep, including Frankie Edgar. That's huge.
Yeah, knocked out KO's Clay Guida, taps Moicano, which turned out to be a bigger win than we thought because Moicano's still looking strong. Taps Cub Swanson and knocks out Frankie Edgar. That is nuts. God, I get goosebumps thinking about that fight. Nothing screw this up. I want someone watching Conor McGregor at all times because Max has kind of made some noise about him. I don't want anything screwing up this fight. Nothing. And I will be covering it this Saturday in the MMA Zone of 411 Mania. So stop by, say hello, we'll have some laughs, we'll talk about the fights, we'll talk about, it's your comments section, it's not mine, whatever you want to talk about that the mods will let through. I don't care. Just be civil about it. That's literally all I ask. Be civil and respectful. Everything else, go for it. All right. What did you want to... So what are the news items, Jeff? That's all the main...
Did you have something to say about the whole...
yeah.
Wilder and Fury? Fight was scored a draw, but most people seem to think Fury should have won.
That's the dumbest scorecard since Canelo beating Triple G. I have not seen anyone... Look, let me be clear. Scoring that fight a draw is stupid. And that includes the fact that Wilder had 2 knockdowns in the course of that fight. Stupid. Giving it to Wilder. Scoring that fight for him. The judge who scored that fight for Wilder should not only never be allowed to judge a fight again, you should take away his driver's license. You can't trust that guy with a library card.
You want to know what the worst scorecard was to me ever? The worst one ever?
Mm-hmm.
In boxing. Lennox Lewis drawing Evander Holyfield in their first fight in 1999.
Been a while since I've seen that fight.
Lennox Lewis should have won that fight.
I mean, there have been some There have been some really bad judges' scorecards in boxing. I mean, historically, it's just got a long history. The couple of these recently, man. Again, both of the Golovkin-Canelo fights were just terrible scores. I mean, the first one being a draw was stupid. The second one going to Canelo was even worse.
Is this corrupt? Is this corrupt judges, or like, what do you think? Is it just incompetence? What do you think?
Both. Like, if you want to get a desired result from a judge's scorecard in boxing, you only have to pay off one judge. The other one will probably get it wrong just because he sucks, and then the third one who's competent just doesn't matter.
Just because, to me, it was obvious Lennox Lewis won the first fight with Holyfield. And then I
don't know. I'd have to look at, again, like some fights you can kind of tell that maybe something was going on depending on the parties involved. I don't know.
Like it was it was obvious to Holyfield looked awful in this fight. He looked like an old man, basically. He looked like it was like an old man getting beat up by the younger fighter. Let's see. How old is Holyfield even? He's 56. He's only a few years older at this point. But that was pretty bad for that fight to be scored a draw.
This was a really bad score. Again, the fact that it was split is just unconscionable to me.
And I remember in one Mayweather fight that he obviously won, one judge scored it a draw, and there was a lot of outrage. There was a lot of outrage and just rabble. What was the fight where one judge had it a draw for Mayweather? The Mayweather fight. It was a while. People were like the governor said we're going to look into it. I don't think anything ever came of it, but man,
of course it didn't.
Yeah,
because they had. Hang on, let me see. Because we have UD. This would have been a majority.
I'm just
decision.
saying, Samer and Pat get so angry about the judge thing in MMA.
Was it Canelo? It might have been the first Canelo fight. That was a majority draw.
I'm just saying. Boxing. This goes back longer.
Oh no, plenty of people are just as mad about it in boxing. In MMA.
But I mean,
yeah, it would have been the Canelo fight. That was a majority. That was the first Maidana fight.
It's offensive to me that Holyfield got a draw in that first fight with Lennox Lewis.
Yeah,
it's offensive. Should not have happened.
It would have been either Alvarez or Maidana. Those are the only majority decisions.
I do think that message from Tyson Fury after that fight, was pretty powerful. Saying, he did it for the people who have been through where he hit rock bottom for a little while.
Oh yeah, whatever his mental health issues are, and forgive me, I don't know the specifics of them. I know he's talked about having issues.
Depression. He's had he's had some drug issues.
Oh, he got so fat. I mean, he ballooned. He was well over 300 pounds.
Yeah. But I mean, the thing is, it's a constant when you're dealing with that, it's a constant battle,
Oh yeah.
And one slip up and you're back at rock bottom. So
I've battled depression for well over 10 years at this point, and I
hope this doesn't discourage him. And I mean, he seemed
pretty positive. I mean, and again, anyone with eyes knows he won that fight. He
seemed to be in a good place after it, despite the results. So I hope I mean,
him surviving that left hook from Wilder in the 12th, man.
Yeah.
Him getting up from that punch is one of the craziest things I have ever seen.
What about why won't Fury fight Anthony Joshua, or why won't Wilder fight Anthony Joshua?
Fury wasn't offered to him. Wilder's afraid of him. Sorry, afraid.
But I mean, to me, this is the problem with boxing. To me, those are those not obvious matchups, right?
Yeah, and I mean, there's been intermittent negotiations about Joshua and Wilder. Joshua took the Klitschko fight,
right,
and Wilder took the Fury fight. I think Joshua smokes Deontay
No
Wilder.
one
I'm well
cares
on
about
record
the
about this.
Klitschko's. No one cares about the Klitschko's, Robert. Come on.
No one in the United States cares about the Klitschko's. Let's clarify this. The Klitschko's are still a significant draw overseas.
Okay, but
And
I mean,
Joshua's a massive star in England, not in the United States.
didn't people hate the Klitschko's when they were on top, when they were champion?
American boxing fans did because they don't like scientific heavyweight boxing.
And so did you.
No, I had no problem with the Klitschko's.
Okay, whatever.
I agreed with the fact that their style
Scientific.
wasn't the most palatable to casual audiences, but I had nothing but respect for their abilities.
Okay, fair enough. But don't you think a fight like Joshua Wilder should happen?
Yes. Absolutely yes.
I just don't. But to me, this is a big problem with boxing, is that those fights don't happen. Mayweather Pacquiao should have happened, like, maybe not 10 years ago, but like 8 years ago, basically.
Certainly 5.
8 or 9 years ago.
Certainly 5 years before it did.
Yeah, pretty much. It happened way too late.
And still did essentially the biggest pay-per-view audience ever.
Yeah, so I mean, imagine how much better it could have been before Pacquiao started getting those losses, you know? When it was legitimately the two of the best combat athletes arguably in the history of the sport, right? You would agree?
Up there. You can make the argument.
Okay. Mayweather certainly, and Pacquiao maybe to a lesser. And that just really annoys me, and it annoys me here. Just because it's would that not be great for the sport of boxing to have a fight like that? You know,
You'd think so.
I mean, I just don't. I don't understand it, Robert. I just don't.
It's just getting the right terms for the right parties at the right time. It's kind
Granted,
of a
I
mess
don't.
at times.
I don't understand. Well, I guess I understand it. I don't understand why it can't change with the judges, the matchups. It's corporate. It's like corporate politics. It's like this thing with Netflix and Marvel and Disney that's going on right now, and we're getting all these good shows canceled. It's dumb. I guess I understand it, but it's still supremely dumb. It's ridiculous.
Again, it's part of the issue fans take with boxing from time to time. Is
all right.
the way
Moving
that
on
works.
from that. So it looks like Anderson Silva versus Israel Adesanya is confirmed, and Dana White confirmed if Silva beats Israel Adesanya, Silva will get a title shot. Hooray!
Dana White is lying through his teeth.
That's what he had to do.
Look, let me be clear about it. Anderson Silva, even if he wins, and I don't think he will, should not be in the title scene. You have Jacare as a deserving contender. You have Whitaker, champion, and I like Whitaker's chances against Gastelum. But even if Gastelum
Anderson
wins,
won his last fight.
I don't have anything against Gastelum. He can win that fight. I favor Whitaker, but I'm not. Gastelum winning would not be the craziest thing in the world.
Anderson beat Derek Brunson, and then Adesanya beat Brunson.
Yeah, Anderson Silva edged out a bad decision over Derek Brunson.
Okay.
Israel Adesanya stopped him in the first round.
Okay.
Who's the other, surging middleweight contender? There was somebody else.
So this fight is going to happen at 234 in Australia. So Israel he was raised in New Zealand. He's not a New Zealander, but he was raised.
Born in Nigeria?
Right.
He's
a Nigerian,
moved to, but spent his whole life in New Zealand.
Not his whole life. I think most of his, probably majority of his youth and adult life were in New Zealand. So that's why he speaks such good English. So yeah, Silva's going to get beat up by Adesanya. I mean, by all logic, he should.
Yeah, this is another kind
How
of
much
passing
do
of
you
the
hate?
torch
Do you
moment.
hate this fight, or are you okay with it?
I'd if I had my ruthers, so to speak,
Right.
I would rather Israel Adesanya fought a relevant contender. However, Israel Adesanya is a spectacular striker that has been drawing comparisons to Silva in a lot of respects. Anderson Silva is, again, I don't think relevant, but
Do we really know how good Adesanya is though yet?
we're getting a pretty good feel, and it's pretty
I mean,
darn.
he looked great against Brunson. Don't get me wrong, but he's undefeated. But he still only had 4 fights in the UFC, right?
Yeah. Again, we're not
Like, I
completely
feel
sure
like
of
I
him.
need, like, to me, people are kind of treating him like Darren Till before Darren Till fought Woodley, and that kind of bothers me.
I would disagree slightly in the sense
Okay.
that
Till what?
Hang on, let me think. Darren Till did not fight guys who were stylistically bad for him. Israel Adesanya has fought nothing but guys who are stylistically bad for him.
I mean, come on. Brunson, yeah, I can give you that. Just because
Brunson and Bermudez are both wrestlers, first
When did
and foremost.
Bermudez?
Yes. His MMA success was largely predicated on his ability to force the fight to the ground.
Wait, how did... Adesanya fighting Bermudez?
Yeah, that
Who
was
you
a
talking-
tough... That was designed to be a
You mean
test
Tavares. You mean Tavares. You must mean Tavares.
Tavares, yes. Oh, God. Yeah, Bermudez is a featherweight.
Tavares, okay.
I get
but
those
that's
two
just,
confused all the time.
But to me, that's just 2 fights. That's
sure,
2 fights.
but they're also 2 fights against guys who present questions that he has to answer,
Like,
whereas Darren Till was fed...
he beat 2 tough ranked opponents, but to me, he hasn't beaten like the top 5 guys yet.
No, he hasn't fought a top 5 guy yet. And again, would I rather he was fighting a guy... I hate the UFC's new design layout for their page. I
don't like. It's not even working for me right now.
Yeah, I'm trying to look up their rankings, and they're just like giving me a blank page.
Mess. It's a mess.
Get this crap sorted out. So, because there was some other guy who I was thinking about at middleweight that was just like.
I'm going to see if I can... Okay, I found a better rankings page.
This is going to bother me until I look it up now.
Paulo Costa.
Yeah, Costa was fighting... like, him and Romero, I think, is still the one that
the
they're
thing
fighting.
is, I don't want him fighting a guy like Weidman yet, because, like,
No.
I just think... Just because of where Weidman is right now...
I don't know.
See, who would I...
Someone who moved up in weight, but...
I wouldn't mind him fighting Rockhold, but would Rockhold even take that fight?
I'd rather he fought Weidman than Rockhold.
Huh. I would rather he fight Rockhold right now, honestly.
That's fair.
But...
oh, God, who was the guy who just...
this is the fight the UFC is doing.
Again, I would rather he fought a relevant contender, but...
I kind of just wish Anderson would retire, you know?
Yeah, but, the young eat the old in MMA. This is what we do. And Anderson is still a name. And does it mean less to beat him in 2018 than pretty much any other point in his career? Yes. But Anderson also has not become a joke. And beating him before he becomes a joke it's a high-profile fight. It's a fight between, what is essentially the next iteration of what Silva was doing in MMA. I can understand the logic, even if it's not what I would want. I like Adesanya a lot, but I'm still not completely sold on him yet. I need to see him assuming he beats Silva. I need to see him do a little bit more before I can anoint him. You know, to me, it's not like what I saw in Max Holloway when he was having his run. Okay, that's fair. No, I would like to see him fight one more, a legitimate top contender.
I just think sometimes a fighter will have a nice run and people will prematurely like get on the hype train. I feel like it happened with Ngannou. Though
Let
I
me
mean,
be clear about Adesanya. I'm on the hype train, so to speak, but I'm not calling him a future champion.
well, look, I understood it with Ngannou because he was one of the more exciting contenders heavyweight had had in a while. He had a great look. He was putting guys to sleep. I get it. But I didn't believe he was capable of beating Stipe, and he didn't. And then I got to be honest, I don't like Adesanya matching up with Robert Whittaker. I like Whittaker in that fight.
At the moment, actually, let me think about that for a minute.
If they were fight tomorrow, I would.
If that was the next fight for both men, I would favor Whittaker. In 2 years, I would probably favor Adesanya, assuming trends continue.
Well, let's see where Adesanya is a year from now.
Yeah, again, there's a lot that can happen during that
time.
I
would not want him to be booked in a title fight after beating Anderson Silva. Let me say that much.
I don't want him to jump. I don't want him to jump into a title fight off of that.
I kind of feel like Darren Till, they're going to jump the gun with him, and I think that could be bad for him. It could be good. Look.
Sometimes guys rise to the occasion in those circumstances. They do. Sometimes they crash and burn.
GSP crashed and burned against Matt Hughes in their first fight.
Yep.
And then that lit a fire under him, did it not? It made him the best welterweight of all time. So it could be good.
One of the best ever, period.
So Dana White says they're going to keep doing. How are they going to keep doing the? Who is paying money for the Ultimate Fighter?
I don't know, but I hate them.
But I mean, like, I can understand international, like international networks or some sort of like channel wanting the content for overseas, but like is ESPN gonna pay for this?
I don't. Apparently, I mean, there was no mention of the Ultimate Fighter when they announced the partnership. That was not part of the scheduled programming.
How are you getting revenue from it now? I just don't understand.
I mean, a lot of what they get paid would be up front. Like, they're just paid for the content, and then they split the, whatever they're able to make of ad revenue.
Not the UFC. Like, the person who's paying for it, like, what are they getting out of it?
I don't know. Like, whatever ratings this thing can dredge up. Content, this is one of the things.
I mean, it's not like, I mean, look, to me, it's not quite like, unless like someone in Saudi Arabia is like a huge fan of the Ultimate Fighter and just wants it kept on the air. Could it be that?
I don't know. Again, I don't know who's paying for it, but quite frankly, I'm not sure Dana's telling the truth because he says that, but there's been no official announcement.
That's the other thing. I think it could just be Dana just playing the promoter.
There's a degree of this that might be negotiating in public. Like, there's a few different people who they're shopping it to who might be interested just because they need content, and he's now trying to turn up pressure a little bit.
Yeah. Dana, we know Dana likes to embellish things and stretch the truth, if not outright break it. So yeah,
I don't know who's paying for this. Who's paying for the Ultimate Fighter to be on their channel in 2018? But you're getting ripped off.
I mean, if they are, they might deserve to get ripped off, Robert. You know?
I mean, the UFC has such a, bizarre fixation with the Ultimate Fighter. If no one will pay for it to be broadcast, they might just do it as a Fight Pass exclusive thing.
I mean, look.
Which is their prerogative. It's their platform.
Just cancel the Ultimate Fighter and do Tuesday Night Contenders. Like, that's your vehicle.
We have the Contender Series, which is better in every way.
Yeah, I mean, like, because it's just fights.
It's just fights.
It's just
some
fights.
Good fights too. There are some good fights on that show.
And there's actual stakes there. Like, you'll get a UFC contract, or you're fighting for your spot in the UFC, right? That makes more sense to me. I don't get it.
I would also like, if you're doing the Contender Series, anyone who has lost, say, 3 fights in a row has to fight on the Contender Series to maintain their spot.
Sage Northcutt is no longer in the UFC. he fought out his contract, and the UFC did not renew his contract. So it's not like they cut him. He's just not getting a new deal or
They
whatever.
couldn't come to whatever terms they want. I mean, if one's paying him a boatload of money and the UFC just didn't want to match it, that's certainly possible.
I mean, it's so weird to me because there was so much debate about Sage Northcutt and how UFC was giving him, like, he was like the UFC lapdog. And people were complaining about his pay and what he was getting paid compared to other fighters. So it's so weird this is happening.
In fairness, there was that brought up a deserved point about that in some respects.
I mean, to me, like, you know, it's not about what you deserve in this sport. It's about what you can get.
Yeah, which is also true.
So, and here's the thing. Sage was on a 3-fight winning streak when he left. He wasn't beating like contenders or anything, but he had a fairly good run. He only had 2 losses. And he had, let's see, 1, 2, 3. He went 6-2. He's still, so what do you make of this, Robert? Michael Bisping says the UFC doesn't like it when fighters fight out their contracts and they're trying to send a message. What do you think?
That's probably part of it. I mean, the UFC doesn't like to be leveraged at all by anyone under any circumstances. That includes fighting out your contract to fight on a win. I imagine that he got a good deal from one that the UFC was not willing to match. Because, I mean, he's not fighting for free.
Sage Northcutt, I mean, I like Sage Northcutt, but this isn't a huge loss to me.
No, it's really not the biggest loss.
To me, losing DJ, Eddie Alvarez, Phil Davis are even bigger losses. Even Ryan Bader were bigger losses to me. Because Ryan Bader was basically a perennial top 10, close to top.
There was an argument at the time that he was the number 1 contender.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah. Those were all, I mean, I like Sage, and I will say this. I agree with Dana that, you know, him fighting outside the UFC and getting some more fights and developing.
Him coming back in 3 years is definitely a possibility.
Because he's young enough where I think that could definitely be a factor.
Oh yeah, he's what, 20-something? Like early 20s?
Yeah, he can't be older than 23. He's still 22 years old. So,
yeah. So him coming back when he's 25, 26.
Arguably,
possible.
He might have come into the UFC a little too early, but whatever. I think, you know, I like him a lot. So we'll see. I don't know, but Sage Northcutt no longer in the UFC. I think we still don't have confirmation on what's happening with Brock Lesnar and Daniel Cormier.
Concrete, I believe.
Did you watch the sit-down interview between John Jones and Helwani?
I did not.
Okay. That was a very interesting interview they had. Granted, granted, I don't like the way Helwani asks questions and conducts it in some points, but he does fairly well with those. Go ahead.
No, sorry.
No, that's what I wanted to say.
No, I haven't seen it. I don't watch a lot of MMA interviews. I don't. This is gonna sound terrible. I don't find most fighters all that interesting to listen to. I need to know that they're talking about something I care about, and to make sure that the content is curated in an appropriate
Jones says
way for me
weird
to care
stuff.
about it.
Jones says weird stuff sometimes, but let me just say this. It wouldn't surprise me if Jones gets back into trouble again.
Wouldn't shock me at all. Plenty of fighters do.
I really, and you want to know, I really feel comfortable saying John Jones is the Darryl Strawberry of MMA.
That might not be an inaccurate comparison, because Strawberry was one of the best in baseball. and fell apart because of drug use.
Let me read you some of Darryl Strawberry's accolades. 8-time All-Star, 4-time World Series champion, Rookie of the Year, Slugger Award of the Year, home run leader, 1988. I mean, that would
Strawberry was great. He was a great outfielder.
That's like a first ballot Hall of Fame resume, is it not?
Yeah.
I mean, that's like a Hall of Fame. I mean, he arguably could have been even better if not for all those problems, right? Don't you think? He
certainly would have been around longer, if nothing else.
Yeah. I don't know. Is he doing okay now? I don't know.
He was the subject of that 30 for 30 about him and Doc, right? It was Doc and Darryl.
Yeah.
I don't know the specifics of what he's up to now, but
I mean, I know he's still alive.
That might be a fairly accurate comparison when all things are said and done.
But I just remember it just with Darryl Strawberry, it just kept being one thing or another, and it seemed like when he finally turned his life around and he was having a great run, it seems like it just kept popping up. But there you go. There. So, any other news items you've thought of? I mean,
let me think.
NSAC filed complaint against Connor
just
and
moving forward with what's going on with both of them.
Yeah.
It's good that it's moving forward and not taking any longer.
It's not really a major step. It's not really major news to me, but it's a thing that happened.
I mean, it's a formalized step in the process, and thankfully they're taking it rather than dicking around.
Okay, so Tito, like Dana White was on Unfiltered, and he was going off on De La Hoya and Golden Boy, doing the Dana White thing. Then Tito was on Instagram. He said, when you sold the company for over $4.5 billion, how much of that did Chuck and I get? Nothing. I'm trying to build something new and rewarding for the sport. This is not about you. It's not about me. Yes, it is. I want it to be about the fighters and giving them the opportunity to share in all the reward, blah, 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 sharing all the rewards and businesses has to offer, where they don't have to fight when they are. Okay.
I mean, you're not wrong, but you're also.
Don't have to fight when they are 43 and 48. I mean, how you say that, and yet you fight and beat a 48-year-old guy, and then you tell him like you're welcome to have a spot in Golden Boy MMA. Like, what the hell? Come on here. This is a joke.
Apparently the fight between Paige Van Zandt and Rachel Ostovich for ESPN for Fight Night 143 is still on.
I hope not. I sincerely hope not.
Ostovich, again, she was originally diagnosed with a broken orbital bone. Apparently a second opinion seems to indicate that she will be.
She was almost beaten to death by her husband, and you're about to put her in a cage to fight someone.
Again, that's just what was last reported. And
I don't believe that for a second.
Whether or not it sticks, we'll see. But that is the current.
The
current situation.
I sincerely hope it doesn't.
So there was that.
You can't find someone else to fight Paige for Paige to hopefully beat. Come on. But I'm not done talking about Tito Ortiz here.
Go ahead.
So, all right.
Hang on. Just before you get into that, they announced the rematch between Marlon Moraes and Rafael Assunção for Fight Night 144.
For Assunção.
I hope Moraes takes his head off this time, man. Not that I don't like Assunção, but let's get some clarity about this. And Moraes,
why is Dominic Cruz not getting off his butt and fighting an actual fight? Just trying to get hit, just trying to cherry pick title fights. It really angers me.
It happens.
It's all he does.
I don't like it necessarily, but I don't know. I'm kind of beyond getting terribly upset about it in a lot of ways.
That's what he's exactly. If he fights again, that's exactly what he's going to do.
Oh yeah. Same way Moraes is going to get on the mic and say I should fight for the belt if he wins. Same way Assunção is.
But Moraes actually deserves a shot at the title. right now. So
Let me see.
you know I'm right.
It's not
You
worth
like
getting
Austin
into.
Sal. What is this? You know what? You just want to see Cruz fight Dillashaw for the title again and win the title back. That's what
I'm
you
just
want.
not going to get overly worked up about Cruz trying to cherry pick his way into the fight.
Because you love Cruz and you want to see him beat Dillashaw for the belt again. Admit it.
I do love Dominic Cruz, but I think Moraes is the deserving contender. I think
Okay.
even if Cruz comes back and beats
You don't sound committed to that view.
Marlon Moraes is the deserving number one contender,
Okay.
especially if he beats Rafael
Okay.
Assunção. I don't
Okay.
care if Cruz comes back and beats John Lineker, which I think he would. He shouldn't Q jump, even though he
Okay.
did beat TJ.
Okay.
I think Assunção has the stronger immediate body of work.
He beat TJ and then he lost the title. He hasn't fought since.
I am aware. And again, I would rather
He
Moraes was fighting for
legitimately
the belt.
lost the title, even though you scored that fight for him.
And
So-
yes, again, I'm on record as saying I was horribly mistaken about that.
All right. So it's time. So yeah, but then you have to say, even though he beat TJ,
Because it's a relevant
Deep
factor
down-
when he's the last guy that beat
deep
TJ,
down
the current champion.
deep down you believe that he should get the title fight against TJ again.
No,
It's okay.
I just said it should be Moraes.
You say that, but like I can hear it in the tone.
There's
That's what-
quasi-resignation because I think there's a better than 50% chance that Cruz does get the title fight.
All right, that doesn't matter though, because he lost the belt and he hasn't fought since.
Sure.
So that
and-
it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter in this case.
sure,
It doesn't matter.
That's one of the reasons I'm not going to get worked up about
He
it. Because
should
if I
fight
emotionally
Moraes.
invest one way or
If
the
that's
other, and
the
then the
case,
other
then
thing
he
happens,
fight Moraes. That's the case, Robert. Then he should fight Moraes and beat Moraes. It's that simple.
I would love to see that fight.
Because Dillashaw did the exact same thing, and he beat the guy who beat Cruz.
Yeah.
So there you go.
And
All right.
he's
So
sticking
Chuck,
around for vanity photos
All
at
right,
25.
look. I don't know exactly how much they made over the course of their careers, but Chuck and Tito were definitely paid millions of dollars by the UFC. The
Almost
UFC,
certainly.
not even almost. Certainly they were.
I'm just not familiar enough with the financials.
Not
from
only that, after Chuck retired the first time, the UFC gave him an office job until the WME sale. So that's like, what, 5 or 6 years he got an office job to basically do nothing, right?
Oh, he never. I would be shocked if if he knew where his office was. Like he got paid
Right.
to sit home and not fight.
Right. So, I mean, that's basically that's basically a charity job. I don't care what anyone says. This is like that's like the U.S. Like Chuck, you were a loyal soldier to us for years. We're doing this for you. They did, and you know what? No corporation has to do anything like that, Robert. You know,
Not unless they're contractually obligated to.
and I'm not saying like the UFC did it, you know, because they're a good company or anything, but they did not have to do that, okay? And they gave Chuck Liddell a job for several years. Are you going to tell me that wasn't a 6-figure job, probably, to just sit at home and do nothing?
Probably it was. Again, I don't know for sure, but wouldn't shock me if it was.
Okay, and they did that to a few people who they felt were good with them and were loyal to them.
What,
Like they
Hughes
did
and Griffin,
Forrest-
right?
Forrest Griffin, Matt Hughes, Chuck Liddell,
I think that's
and
it.
I think that there might have been a couple others, but those
Hey,
were
at
the
least-
main.
And you know, Forrest kept the job after the buyout because Forrest actually did his job.
Right. Okay, so there was that. So the UFC didn't have to do that, and basically the UFC took care of Chuck for several years where they didn't have to. And I would assume Chuck is still financially well off. I'm not sure, but I mean, they came back, they did this fight. Chuck got half of what he got for his last UFC fight. Tito got paid less for disclosed figures than what he did for his last UFC fight. So, like, why? How is he building anything that's good for the fighters on a card where guys were getting paid like 2 and 2 and I think like one guy got paid $1,250 before taxes and fees. Okay, so that fighter is probably in the hole for that fight. And the veterans, the UFC veterans like Gleason Tebow, were definitely getting paid. They were paid like a fraction of what they were making for their last UFC fights. So how can Tito Ortiz take any kind of high ground here and say they're building something that's good for the fighters that will reward them? And like him and Oscar De La Hoya are an absolute joke. And I can't, for them to say those things, like, it's one thing to say that and then just turn around and put on a card like this where to me, the amounts are laughable. Laughable.
Look, Oscar De La Hoya was a con man during his boxing career, too. He was a good boxer, don't get me wrong.
He was a good boxer for a while.
Great boxer in a lot of respects. Still a con man. He's a con man as a promoter because all promoters are con men.
Right.
And now he just...
Dana White's excluded for that. Let me be clear. I'm not defending Dana White.
No, Dana's done tons of shady and stupid stuff in his day. He's a promoter. It's
My
what they
point
do.
is, I'm not defending Dana White in this instance. I'm more taking to task Tito and De La Hoya, trying to act like they're these virtuous, upstanding promoters who are doing right by the fighters. I think
not so much.
I mean, and then I talked to the MMA junkie guys, and they're like, "Oh, the Oscar De La Hoya means the people at the top." How is paying Tito and Chuck less? Okay, they get sponsorships and revenue or whatever. Like, how much revenue did this fight actually pull in?
I think, what was it? Something like 30,000 buys.
Yeah, like. I mean, I guess that's good if you're like Impact Wrestling or TNA Wrestling. Excuse me. But I don't know. It just made me angry.
Bellator would have killed for that for their pay-per-view.
I mean, look, my point is, Robert, it makes me angry for Ortiz and De La Hoya to act this way and run a card like this. And then we see these salaries. They're not. And nothing against Tom Lawler, but like Robert, Tom Lawler, he was never a serious fighter. Okay, he never really
was. He just Tom Lawler got. Hang on, just if you're going to bring up Tom Lawler got screwed by the UFC.
How?
He had a dubious drug test failure under USADA.
Everyone who failed a drug test had a dubious.
Hang on.
Whatever.
It's not just that, okay? That happens. You sign up to fight in the UFC at this point. You know what you're getting into with that. You have no privacy or personal space. You're subject to an authoritarian regime. Fine. You sign up for that. You know what you're in for. The UFC then deliberately kept him under contract until his suspension was up, so he couldn't fight anywhere else. The minute his suspension was up, then they cut him.
I don't know the whole story.
It was a horrible,
and I don't,
petty, punitive thing to do.
I don't know that's true. I don't necessarily believe that's true. I don't believe that.
That is.
I need to see more.
That's literally what happened.
Well,
again, is he the best fighter in the world?
My point is, Lawler also made less than what he made in his last UFC fight.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he did. There's a couple of his pro wrestling appearances that might have netted him more money than he made for that fight.
So, I don't know. So, again, my point is De La Hoya really doing right by these fighters and doing what he says he is and paying them and doing what he promised? He's not. So, unless you're actually going to do that, shut up. If you're a promoter, if you're going to play promoter. That's my point. And I don't think I'm being unreasonable here.
I mean, look, it was a stupid card that nobody who watched felt good about watching.
Well, I did not watch it, and I hope everyone who did feels bad.
I haven't seen anyone react positively to having watched it.
Michael Bisping was semi-positive about it, which disappointed me. But for all I know, Bisping might have been They might have paid Bisping to go to the event, for all I know. So there you go.
Yeah, Bisping's also been hitting the head a lot, so.
I mean, even then, it's not a good enough excuse. Like, Bisping has been hitting the head a lot, but he's still aware enough to know right from wrong.
Yeah.
All right, that's all I really had to say about that.
Okay. I think that is everything I had wanted to touch on, so let's go ahead and do plugs and then get out of here. What would you like to plug, sir?
I'll be reviewing Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse coming up, Mary Poppins Returns, and Bumblebee. Possibly Aquaman if Warner Brothers will actually send me the invite. But those are the next reviews coming up. Thank you, guys. Hopefully we will have good news for the fight going forward next weekend.
Look, it'll either have happened and we'll be happy about it, or it won't and we'll be pissed.
Well, and we'll talk about that too. Thank you, everyone.
All right. As for me, again, I will have coverage of UFC 231. Next week we will have a review of that. I don't have a crappy movie to review this week. Yay! Last Tuesday, Mark and I reviewed Robin Hood. Might be the worst movie I've seen all year, and that includes A Wrinkle in Time. Catastrophically bad movie. So listen to us trash it. It's a lot of fun. This week, Damn You Hollywood will be reviewing Creed 2, but I will not be there because I claim small moral victories over Mark in his tyrannical schedule where I can. This time around it was Creed 2. So you can listen to Mark as well as, I believe, Ronnie Adams and Jason Teasley review it. There's going to be 3 of them. They're going to talk about it. You should listen. It's a good show. But I will not be there this week. I will be there in the future. I'm going to be stuck reviewing both Bumblebee and Aquaman and just hating life. I want to die. I really do. I'm going to sit there watching Aquaman going, grim death might be preferable to this. I'm almost positive. Next week, we will review UFC 231, and we will double-check the dates on this. We will preview UFC on Fox 31, the last Fox card. It's a pretty good card, actually. The main event is Kevin Lee and Al Iaquinta in a rematch. Edson Barboza fights Dan Hooker. That's a darn good fight. Rob Font and Sergio Pettis. Jim Miller and Charles Oliveira. A rematch. Last time they fought, Jim Miller knee-barred Charles Oliveira. It was hilarious and awesome. Bobby Green. This is a really solid card, actually. So tune in for our preview of that. And, I'll see you all then. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for sharing us with your friends. Seriously, if you know people, point them in our direction. If you're on Twitter, whatever the social media you might use, if you have a friend who's just into the sport, please point them in our direction. We are trying to grow this. I'll be back next week again for that review and preview. Until then, thank you again. Stay safe out there, and please continue to be well, be safe, and behave.